Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas yesterday. Interesting, I didn't have a white Christmas yesterday, but we're having a white after Christmas because I woke up today and it was snowing outside. So, not a real heavy snow, but still currently snowing today. So, yeah, somewhat of a white Christmas. Uh, Around Christmas time, we're getting some snow, which I didn't know we were going to snow today until I woke up and I was like, oh, because it's been actually kind of warm lately. It's been in the 40s and 50s. So it didn't feel like it's been that cold yet. And so today it's like in the 30s. So it's colder, not freezing cold, but, you know, I'm not a big fan of snow only because I don't like driving in snow. I don't like not being able to see when I'm driving, and I don't like having slick roads, so that part I don't like. But snow is definitely makes it feel more Christmassy, so I do like that part of it, I suppose. But I don't think it's going to be a heavy snow right now, anyways. But anyway, so I guess it's nice. We're a little more Christmassy feeling today, day after Christmas. I personally did not do much. I worked the Christmas Eve night shift, so I slept most of Christmas, all Christmas morning and some of the afternoon. Um, when I got up, I was on Mike's live stream yesterday. So I got to talk to Mike and Ryan Swells, another YouTuber from England. So that was fun. Get to talk to friends from England. That was kind of the highlight of my Christmas. And then after that, I just watched YouTube videos and yeah, and I watched a movie that I'll talk about actually on my on this list today. And yeah, that was my Christmas. Not much. I'm gonna go visit family after New Year's. I'll have some time off from work. I'll get to go visit some family then, and then I can do a semi Christmas during that time period. Anyway, so that's my Christmas, anyways. But hope everybody's doing well out there. This is stream kind of like I did last year, going through my top 10 favorite movies of the year and top 10 worst movies of the year. And I thought I'd just do it in one live stream, get them both done. We still have some time left in the year, and there's still a lot of movies I want to see. All right, there you are, Mike. I was hoping you'd be there. How you doing, Mike? I am live. Um, you'll be interested in some of the movies I'm going to talk about, Mike, I'm sure. But anyways, uh, yeah. So, but of course, the year's coming to an end. Everybody's doing their top 10 lists, and so I'm off today. So I feel like today was a good day to do a just go through my top 10 favorites and least favorite movies of the year. And I'll be watching more movies from this year in the next month. So maybe for a month from now, I'll have like a bunch more movies to talk about and my list will change. But as of right now, this is my top 10 favorite and worst of the year. And in total, I saw 52 movies that came out this year. Only 3 movies in the movie theater. I went to the movie theater 3 times. Saw um, John Wick Chapter 4, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Godzilla Minus One. I think were 3 that no 4. I saw Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. So I saw 4 movies this year, which actually might be more than I usually watch at the movie theater. Mostly I catch it on video on demand or streaming. See, Mike, I'm intrigued to hear your list. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of movies we disagree on. Yes, we will disagree. That is for sure. We'll agree maybe on some, but disagree on some for sure. Um, but yeah, so going through my list, yeah, I saw 52 movies this year, which is a decent amount for me. It's not Mike probably saw 100 movies this year. I don't know. Um, Yet he hasn't seen some of the classics like Jaws, but yet he sees like 100 movies probably that I didn't see coming out this last year. And some of you, yeah, seen way more movies than me, but hopefully 52 is enough movies. I can put together a decent enough list here. Hopefully it's somewhat respectable. Anyway, so I'm going to start with my top 10 worst movies of the year. Start with the negative and then end on the positive. First, do some honorable mentions. They didn't quite make it to my 10 worst movies. Still, I need to acknowledge their terribleness in a sense. Um, There's a couple movies that you probably maybe most people haven't seen or heard of. These are movies that I didn't really know that much about until I heard somebody else talk about it, then caught it, and then I was like, oh, this is terrible. Um, One movie is a movie called Theater Camp, which was again a movie you may never heard of, and it's this movie about these uh, theater camp where in the summer I guess these kids go to this theater camp and they rehearse and put on plays and stuff like that. And it's kind of a mockumentary where they're talking to the camera, like it's a documentary style, but it's supposed to be kind of a comedy. And it's kind of somewhat about the people that put the camp together. And I guess there's supposed to be some quirkiness to it, maybe. The lady who runs the camp is like in a coma. So her son takes over. Her son's like a stupid YouTuber, um, and so he doesn't really know how to run the camp, and that's kind of the comedy around it. Hey Norrin, glad to see you. Hope you're doing well there in New Mexico. It's probably not snowing where you're at. Um, yeah, and so you watch this kind of story of this people trying to put on this camp, and the camp is like losing money, so they might go out of business if they don't put on a good show. It's that kind of thing, and it's like the main actors in the movie also like wrote the screenplay. So there's like 4 or 5 screenplay writers, I think, if I remember right, and one of them directs it, if I remember right. The only actor I remember that I knew was Ben Platt, who, and this was a movie that I didn't know anything about and didn't come out in theaters or anything that I know of. But someone I knew on YouTube said this was the funniest comedy they've seen all year. So I thought, I like the premise. I like to have, watch a good, funny movie, maybe you'll have a few laughs, who knows. And I like Ben Platt. He's a really good singer. So I thought, oh, maybe it's a musical. Maybe I'll hear Ben Platt sing because Ben Platt was great. I thought in, what's it called? The Evan movie that came out, which he won like a Tony for. Um, Dear Evan Hansen. Anyways, I really liked the music in that. I thought Ben Platt was great. So I was like, oh, if Ben Platt sings, then I'll be happy. But turns out that Ben Platt, I mean, it's not a musical. There's really not singing. Ben Platt's just an actor in it. And I thought, oh, what is his voice? I don't know why. Anytime I see Ben Platt, I want to hear him sing. But um, yeah, so it's kind of this. Seems like a movie that just these people kind of just wrote together, and I think maybe they wrote a short or something, and they said, hey, let's try to make a theatrical movie. And so they come out with this. Anyways, it was not funny at all. I didn't laugh once. It was very cringe humor. The guy who runs the camp, the idiot son, was one of the worst performances I've ever seen, and one of the most annoying characters I've ever seen on film. And yeah, it's just for a comedy, if you're not funny, I just, there's nothing worse than a comedy that's not funny. And for me, I didn't laugh once, and I didn't like any of the humor, and I was bored to tears. And yeah, it was, I thought, a terrible, terrible movie. Theater Camp. Again, a little known movie, but and I wouldn't have watched it except for someone said, hey, it's a funny movie. So like, oh, I'll check it out. Nope. Theater Camp is a movie that got a very small run in the UK, but I missed it. I know it's on Disney now, I believe. Oh, on your Hulu, not on Disney Plus in the United States, but probably on Hulu. I've heard mostly, or Stars, or whatever you have in the UK. I've heard mostly okay things about it. Yeah, and I've heard people say good things about it. I thought it was one of the worst movies of the year, and just total waste of time. But anyways, that's Theater Camp. um, there's a movie called A Million Miles Away. Another movie that I never heard of, except for somebody on YouTube said this was one of their favorite movies of the year, and I was like, oh, when someone gives such a great review, sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to watch this movie. Uh, Maybe it's a hidden gem. This one I just could not get into. And it's a true story about a guy who was a Mexican immigrant who then goes on to be an astronaut and goes up in space. I think he goes to some space station, anyways. And the whole story is that, oh, he's the first Mexican immigrant to go to space, which is like, to me, I'm like, who cares? Like, doesn't matter to me. I mean, good for him, He came from a poor, family probably. I mean, he did, and they worked the fields and all that. And he was really good at math, and he tried hard at school. And he had a teacher who believed in him. And it feels like we've seen these stories. I mean, October Sky, same kind of similar storyline, except about a white kid from a mining town for West Virginia or whatever. So it doesn't feel like that original idea. Of course, it's a true story, which the whole idea is that's supposed to be very inspirational. You're supposed to feel, oh wow, I'm so inspired by this guy who shouldn't have been able to do it, and he did it. But yeah, I felt no inspiration the whole time. I just felt no emotions. I don't know. It didn't catch me emotionally, and I thought, if you're trying to be a inspirational movie, I need to feel some kind of emotion. Yet for me, I just didn't feel any emotion. Didn't really care about the characters. Didn't care about the storyline all that much. It did nothing for me. So again, I hate to say this because the person who likes it, I respect that person very much as a reviewer, but yet I don't know. I just did not get this one, unfortunately. And Michael Pena was the main actor. And I like Michael Pena. He does a decent job in most movies, but in this one, I thought was very under. His performance was just underperforming. He just didn't really. He didn't give that great performance for me anyway. So, kind of disappointing movie for me. A Million Miles Away. And then another movie you might have heard of is called Lady Ballers, and this is a movie on Daily Wire Plus, which you might be thinking, what is Daily Wire Plus? Daily Wire is a political conservative company, and they started their own programming where they do their own, they make their own movies and TV shows, and they're really about, the main thing is they're a political company, Daily Wire, and they have people like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, Andrew Clavin, Brett Cooper, Jordan Peterson, I think is part of it. Now I'm forgetting Candace Owens. They're very conservative political people that do conservative talk shows, basically. Anyways, and so, but they've been making out content to try to be counter content to Hollywood, because Hollywood is very liberal, and they put out this very liberal woke movies, and people that are conservative like myself, I'm a conservative. Yeah, it's a put off to watch these very liberal movies and go, wow, these aren't my political views, these aren't my religious views, are kind of being trounced upon in these movies. And so I kind of get it. They're like trying to put out more movies that would, someone like me would believe in more. But anyway, so they did this movie, Lady Ballers, which I haven't seen any of the Daily Wire movies. But I don't know why. I listened to a lot of the Daily Wire stuff. So they were promoting this big time as like this great comedy. And the whole idea is like this movie is this coach gets his old basketball team together from high school, and they pretend to be girls. They identify as women so that they can play basketball against women teams and then beat them, because men are better basketball than women. And that's the whole idea. Is the joke is like if you put men against women, men are going to win because they're just bigger, stronger, more athletic. And it's a play on politics of today. Obviously, it's very political in that sense, but it's supposed to be a comedy, And so I watched it, and it was a terrible comedy. And even though like I'm a conservative, I'm the audience they're trying to go for, and even I was like, oh, this is bad. And a lot of it's because it was the CEO of the company, Jeremy Boring. He's the CEO of this political company, and he wrote the screenplay, directed the movie, and starred in it. And it's like, okay, this guy, he knows how to do political content, but he's not a movie screenwriter. He's not, a movie director. This is the first time he's done any of this stuff. And so it's like, what do you expect? I mean, looking at it, I can't say I expected anything better. Still, though, I just caught it on a whim because I thought, oh, maybe it'd be a silly comedy. Maybe I'll get some laughs out of it. And the humor was just very cringe. It's very badly written. Like I said, he's not a Hollywood writer. Not anybody can write a movie script. I just can't go out there and write a movie script. you have to know what you're doing. I can't just direct a movie, you know. It's like Disney's CEO Bob Iger coming out and saying, "Oh, I've written a screenplay and I'm directing this movie and I'm starring in it." You'd be like, "Okay, Bob Iger, you're like going on like a big ego trip and you have too much power." And it's like, "Yeah, it's not going to work. You need professionals in there." Anyway, so yeah, the humor just for me just did not work at all. Yeah, it was just a big miss, I think, and I don't have much confidence in their movie making. It's just it's not enough to have good intentions. You have to actually be good at what you're doing, in a sense. But no, my least favorites of the year are Skinamarink, Luther, The Fallen Sun. He's talking about on Netflix, which I thought that was a bad movie as well. Cocaine Shark. I couldn't even watch Cocaine. I watched maybe 10 minutes of Cocaine Shark, and I was like, life's too short to watch this movie. Cocaine Shark is way worse than anything I have on this list. Like if I watched Cocaine Shark, that'd be the worst, one of the most worst movies I've probably ever seen in my life. That it's just, but it's just really cheaply made, really badly made. But it's one of those movies that's so bad, it's like purposely bad. It seems like, and people who like bad movies watch it. Like Mike from Did You See That? He lives off of those kind of movies, but yeah, I could only watch about 10 minutes of Cocaine Shark. Skinamarink looks really boring. I just hear bad things about that movie. I feel like we've been um, talking about Skinamarink forever. Was that this year? I thought that was like last year. It feels like that's been out for so long. Hey, Sin. Glad to see you. I've been collaborating with Sin not too long ago with Mike, one of his live streams. Sin's got a great channel. Yeah, Lady Baller sounds awful. Yeah, right. It's a political movie that's trying to be funny and doesn't work. I wouldn't recommend it to you. Next movie I'll talk about is a Disney movie. Actually, all three next movies are all Disney movies. Disney was terrible this year. They made a lot of terrible movies, just like last year. They're on like a 2-year losing streak right now, and it's too bad because they used to make good movies. And I got Disney Plus, so I'm watching these terrible movies on this channel. I'm like, oh god, why can't they make a good movie? They just don't know how to make good movies anymore. So, first one I'll talk about is Elemental, which was I think it was a Disney animation movie, I believe. I forget which was Pixar and which is Disney animation because they both seem the same to me nowadays. But Elemental was kind of their big movie beginning of the year, and I didn't catch it until like a couple weeks ago. I finally got around to it, and I don't think it did. At first, I know it did not do very good. Um, uh, but then I think it kind of caught on eventually and made some money maybe. But at first, it was kind of tanking, and I think it's better than Strange World that came out last year. I thought it was a really terrible Disney movie. Elemental, though, I thought just the story did not work for me. The characters were annoying. The water guy was just the most annoying character, and he was like it's the whole movie is these elemental characters. This family of fire. There's fire families. There's water families. They're made of water. There's wind families, and there's earth families. There are people that live together. So it has kind of this Zootopia type feel, like all these different, it has that kind of thing, like, oh, um, it has almost a Romeo and Juliet thing of the fire girl falls in love with the water guy. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. First of all, fire and water just don't mix. Like I was watching, I'm thinking, and I remember this guy came in, this water guy appears in the movie, and I'm thinking, don't tell me this is the love story between the fire girl and the water guy. That makes no sense. If there's any kind of physical interaction, the water guy will kill the fire girl. Water kills fire. And they even do have a kissing scene. I'm like, this makes no sense. Water would kill fire. How could they have babies or whatever? Like, how could, none of this makes sense. I can't believe in a love story that doesn't make sense. And I thought it was a terrible love story. It just kind of was thrown at you, forced into you. This guy shows up and he cries all the time. The whole character arc, or not character arc, but the whole character of this water guy, I don't remember their names, but the whole thing about the water guy is that he cries a lot. He's constantly whining and crying, and it's like that is the worst character trait you can have in a character. I thought he was so annoying. I hated every time he was on screen, and it was just a really boring movie. Again, Disney just doesn't know how to do it. There's some really good animation movies this year, but I want to say Disney was not one of them. Disney struck out. And I have another movie. Well, I have some good movies I'll talk about animation wise, but um, I'm saying, what else did Disney come out with? Seems like they came out with something else I didn't like, but anyways, let's see. Sen, I think that the whole point of the movie, Mike, satire and nonsense that's going on. I've heard it's not great though. However, American Fiction, another side there was quite good. Yeah, I want to see American Fiction. It's not. I don't know if it's out in theaters. I don't know if it's out yet in theaters or it's coming out in theaters. Uh, Again, I won't catch it until it's like on streaming or something like that. So I'm waiting for it to get there. American Fiction is getting some Oscar buzz, especially for Jeffrey Wright for Best Actor. I think he'll get a nomination there, and Sterling K. Brown could get a supporting nomination. Yeah, I can get a movie that is trying to make fun of politics in a way, but that Lady Bosch sounds awful. It is awful, and the premise is not a bad premise actually. You can maybe make that work, but you just need people that know how to write funny dialogue. That's the only problem. Oh, Jason, I liked Elemental. Oh, you liked Elemental. Oh, I'm sorry. I cannot get into that movie. I thought it was kind of boring and story wise, could not get into it. I don't think it's 2 tier Pixar. Is it Pixar? Okay, I forgot. Is that a Pixar movie? So another bad Pixar movie. Pixar hasn't been doing that well either. But if you compare it to Disney animation, Ruby Gillman's Master. Okay, yeah, like I said, it's not my top worst movies. I do have, yeah, one of those in my top worst. So I will agree with that. Um, all right, another. Let's go to Marvel. Marvel was pretty bad this year. Again, DC was terrible as well. We got a bunch of bad superhero movies. Second year in a row, I feel like we haven't had a good superhero movie in a long time, it feels like. And one of the worst to me was Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. That came out earlier this year. I believe it was like the first Marvel movie of the 3 Marvel movies that came out. Which I haven't seen the Marvels. I heard the Marvels is terrible. So if I watch the Marvels, that'd probably be in my top worst list. But until I see it, I can't put it in there. So we'll see once I'm able to watch that one. That one just really, I mean, all these movies really just tanked. Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did well though, but all the DC movies I think tanked. But anyways, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I like the first 2 movies. They're not my favorite of the Marvel movies, but still pretty good. Hey, Abby, my sister Abby, on lunch break. Yeah, I'm just doing the honorable mentions of my worst movies of the year. Uh, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah, but it's way different than the other movies. I feel like it didn't fit with Ant-Man. Ant-Man, is supposed to be kind of a comedy. They do heist and stuff like that. But this movie was like trying to put Ant-Man in a Star Wars movie, and it just didn't work. It felt the plot just felt too big for Ant-Man. Like that storyline would work better with a Thor character, or Guardians of the Galaxy characters. Felt like it belonged in those movies, not an Ant-Man. Ant-Man's supposed to be more, just fun, comedy and action together. And this was a total sci-fi movie. It was way too much CGI. Just the whole world, because they what do you call it? They all shrink down so small that they're in this like small universe that you go into when you shrink too small. I forgot what it's called now. I should know what it is, but anyways, and so if it's like they're in space, it's a strange concept. And then we get Kang, who cares about Kang, especially with Jonathan Majors, going to jail. Kang's not going to be a major character. I thought Kang as a bad guy was a bad villain. I didn't care for that villain at all. Like, what was the deal with this villain? He seemed to be almost too powerful, and I didn't quite get what his powers were. And I know. And again, he still felt like too big of a villain for Ant-Man. Ant-Man gets small and he gets big. That's his power. It's not that big of a power. It's probably the worst power of all the Marvel Avenger characters. And he's supposed to go up against Kang, who can uh, control you with what do you call it, telekinetic powers, whatever. He can move you, with his mind. It's like, okay, yeah, Ant-Man can't go against this guy. This guy's way too powerful for Ant-Man. Um, so I don't know. I just didn't think the plot fit the Ant-Man character at all. And Quantumania. It's called Quantumania because they're in the quantum universe. That's what it's called, anyways. Um, yeah, it's really badly written. I thought I hated the daughter. They made the daughter the most unlikable character. She's this very liberal activist, and she's very disrespectful to her dad. So I hate kids that are disrespectful to their parents. That's like one of the worst traits you can have in a character. I absolutely hate those kind of characters. So I hated this daughter character so much. You know, Ant-Man helped save the universe, and it's like, give him some credit, for goodness sakes. Uh, and she was just a terrible character. She was, this activist, whatever. And then she's also like a super genius for some reason, which Marvel keeps doing this. They keep bringing in these young girls and making them like as smart as Tony Stark. Like, oh, they're an instant genius for whatever reason. It's like, do we have enough geniuses in this world? How come every single young girl has to be a genius, And she's able to build this machine that makes them go to the quantum universe. Like, how did she do it? I don't know. Movie just tells you she's just super genius naturally, I guess. Anyways, even though her parents aren't super geniuses, it just, I don't know, it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't like that character at all. Of course, you have to talk about what's his name, Modak. Was such a weirdly designed character, and I didn't get why they felt like they need to bring back that character from the first movie, the villain, and it didn't fit this whole Modak thing. It was just, I don't know, it was a weird character to bring back, and weirdly designed. I don't know if he can make that character work. It's just a weird character, and it's not a scary villain at all, as they're trying to make it be. I will say the death scene. I'm spoiling it. There's a death scene that's actually pretty funny, but I'll say that's maybe the best part of the whole movie. And then the ending just kind of happens. It's like they can't defeat Kang, and all of a sudden, oh, we got all these ants, and they're like super ants, and they come in and they defeat Kang, and so it felt like, oh, that seemed easy, it came out of nowhere. And there's some just really bad dialogue. Like, I still think of this one of the worst dialogue I've ever seen in a movie. They kidnap these freedom fighters, I guess, are fighting against like Kang and his empire in this quantum universe. They basically take capture Ant-Man and his daughter, I think, and they bring him back to their camp. And Jack shows up with the villains, and they start, start destroying this freedom fighter camp thing. And the leader says to Ant-Man, like, she's mad at him, like, it's your fault. You brought them to us. And I'm like, you idiot, you captured them and brought them to your camp. They didn't do anything. They wouldn't have been at your camp if you didn't capture them. Why are you blaming them? It was like the stupidest line, one of the stupidest lines I've ever seen in a movie. And that's what I was like, oh, this is a terrible, terrible movie. But yeah, Ant-Man did not work for me. So, yeah, I did not like the daughter in that movie. She wasn't so annoying in the other films. Yeah, I liked her a lot in the other films. I also didn't like the cast replacement. Yeah, she didn't work for me at all. Yeah, why did they replace her? She was barely in Endgame, but like the one scene that character had in Endgame was actually a very emotionally powerful scene. I was like, why not bring her back? Anyways, yeah. And the last honorable, this is just my honorable mentions, but my last honorable mention is going to be Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And yeah, why bring this character? I'm really not liking this whole idea of bringing back old actors to redo a character. Like, I don't need Rambo coming back. I don't need Terminator coming back. I know you love Terminator Sin. I don't know what you think about the last Terminators, but do I need Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back to play Terminator? I don't know. I'm okay with leaving those series be as they are. I'm okay with leaving Indiana Jones the way it is. I don't need another Indiana Jones movie. And so they bring back Indiana Jones, and he's 80 years old. It's Harrison Ford, who's still not bad. He still does a decent job at Indiana Jones for being 80 years old. He's still the best part of the movie. But you bring in that Phoebe Waller-Bridges character, who's this goddaughter you never heard of before, and she's a really unlikable character. And The whole plot I just didn't care for. They're looking for this dial from, I forget who it was, some ancient, you know, real character in real life made a dial that can bring you back to the past or something like that. And I just didn't. The whole story, it's like that doesn't. It's not as good as the Ark of the Covenant or the Chalice of of Jesus. It's just the plot wise, it's like who cares about this stupid dial? Like it's just a I don't know. I thought it was a badly written plot, and it just felt like it didn't need. I guess I put it in here because I just watch it and go, why bring back this character? And it ruins the other movies. I feel like he's a sad old man who's, spoilers, his son's dead. He's like separated from his wife. It's like, what? At least the fourth movie, you ended up with a happy story where it's like, hey, he's married and he has a son and he feels like he's settled down. And this movie like destroys everything that happened in the fourth movie. And it was like, oh no, all the good stuff that happened, forget it. It's all this bad stuff happened to him, and he's now just a sad character. And I don't like that. I don't like bringing back. I hated the Star Wars sequels because they bring back these great characters and they ruin them, and I hate that. I hate bringing back old characters and ruining them, and that's what I feel like Indiana Jones did. So that has to be in my honorable mention or dishonorable mention as well. I got Sin here. Let's see. I heard they replaced her because the replacement actor was more recognizable. Huh. Okay. I guess I don't know about that. Not a fan of the last Terminator movie at all. Hated it. Okay, it was so disrespectful to the fans, in my opinion. Yeah, and Sin's a big Terminator fan, so she'd be the one to listen to that. Couldn't stand Phoebe's character. Super annoying. Yeah, another annoying female character put in the movie with an old hero. Anyways, yeah. So that's my dishonorable mention. So let's get to number 10. 10 worst movie of the year for me, and this is The Little Mermaid, the live action remake. And I, for most part, have not been a fan of live action remakes of great Disney animated movies because I see a remake, a live action, and I just go, I'll just watch the animation movie. It's a classic of my childhood, like Little Mermaid. I didn't like The Lion King. I didn't like Aladdin. Didn't really even like Jungle Book that much. I did like Pinocchio. That's the funny thing is Pinocchio was actually one of my favorite movies from last year, and everybody hated that movie. That was like super hated by everybody. And I came away going, I actually kind of enjoyed Pinocchio, but this one did not work for me at all. Hey Drew, nice to see you. Hope you're having a good kind of Christmas after day. um, and the thing about this live action, it starts off similar to the Disney one, and actually kind of follows along pretty good until you get to the part where she has to go up and get legs, and you have the whole thing with Eric, whatever, Prince Eric, and the this movie is like 2.5 hours long. The original is like less than 2 hours. So I think a lot of the time was when she has legs and she has a whole thing with Eric. I think that was like 30 minutes longer than the Disney. It's like, we don't need a longer version. It should be 2 hours or less. It didn't need to be 2.5 hours. And that's when it got really boring to me, is when she got legs and they're supposed to try this romance, but they didn't do the romance very good, I think, compared to the Disney the animation version. And I mean, of course, you have Ariel is black, and and she's white with red hair, and that's obviously, it's controversial, and people, it's divisive to people. Some people are like, why change the race of the character? You're just trying to play to race politics. And the other side's like, who cares what race it is? It shouldn't be a big deal. And it's like, to me, it's like, hey, Halle Berry, I think her name is, did a fine job as Ariel. Yeah, I think she was fine. I didn't have a problem with her in the movie, so to say. I mean, I do understand though, it's because every single movie they bring, they change, they race swap the characters, and it's like, the only reason why you race swap the characters is for political reasons, I guess, and that's why I don't like it. I don't like the idea of oh, for political reasons, we're going to race swap a character, and it just feels like, okay, you're not you're not casting the actor because they're good. You're doing it because of the race, and I don't think you should cast for race. You should cast for who's the best actress or actor for the role. So I do get that's very annoying, I will say, but at the same time, Halle Berry did a fine job as Ariel. The weird part to me is that all the mermaid characters are different races, and they have a dad who's Latino, I think, Javier Bardem, who's like Spanish, and then they're all different races. So I'm like, what's going on there? Uh, it's like you're just doing that to appease everybody, but it's like whatever. Um, the real problem, another problem, is just the movie felt very dark when they're underwater. Felt like they didn't know how to light those scenes very well, so it didn't come off as good as I think the original in that sense. And there's something about CGIing like Sebastian and Flounder or whatever, and all these characters. Sebastian especially, I think they really missed out on that, because Sebastian's like my favorite character in the original, and he's a very comical character. He has that Jamaican accent, and he has Under the Sea song, which is great, and he's got a very expressive face. He really, and that's part of the comedy of the character, because he's very uptight, and then something happens and he has a face, like, oh my gosh, a shocking face. But when they CGI the crab to look like a real crab, it has no facial expression, so you don't get any of the comedy out of the original. So they totally ruined the Sebastian. I think it's Sebastian, right? The crab, the lobster. Is it lobster? I say crab. It's crab or lobster or whatever. I thought that character was not as fun as the original, so I didn't like that. Um, oh, and like Eric is white, but I think his parents are black, or his mom's black. So I don't know, maybe he was adopted. I forget. But again, it's like, why are we different races just to appease people? It just rubs me the wrong way. It just needs to be consistent and make sense. That's all I ask for. If Eric is black and his parents are black, that's fine. That makes sense. But yeah. Anyways, I have to talk about Awkwafina. Awkwafina is so terrible. I'm so done with Awkwafina. Every time she appears in a movie, I'm like, this character is so annoying. She only knows how to play very annoying characters, and this is the worst, most annoying character of the year. Is the seagull that she plays, and we all know she sings this horrible song, and it's the most horrible thing you've ever heard in her life. The scuttle bug something or other, I think it's called. But her character, in fact, there's a scene in the movie where they do the kiss the girl, which is one of my favorite scenes of the anime movie. It's probably my favorite song from the movie that Sebastian sings, and then they have all these other characters kind of chime in. In the original, though, Scuttlebug doesn't sing in there, but in this one, Scuttlebug sings along with him, and Awkwafina is just so off key. And so when I'm listening to Kiss the Girl, and Awkwafina singing "Kiss that girl," and it's like, oh my god, like your voice is just grating on the ears, and I just hated that choice. Like, it ruined that song, ruined that moment, and I feel like the moments in this movie weren't as good as the animation movies. Under the Sea was way better than the animated movie. Kiss a Girl was way better than the animated movie. So it's like, why make this live action and just make it worse when you got a perfectly good movie there? It's like, I don't know, a lot of these live actions, you're not making the movie better, you're making it worse. And it's like, just to make more money, I guess. It's just a cash grab. And Little Mermaid just didn't work for me. I decided from the moment the casting for Mermaid was announced that I wasn't interested to watch it, because I knew the reason why they did this and gotten ridiculous at this point. Yeah, okay, so you're with me, son. Like, they just have to race swap every single character if they're white. If it's a white character, you can race swap them to any other race. That's perfectly fine. If the character is black, you're not going to make them white, or you're racist. So it only goes one way, and it's just annoying. But anyways, all right, number 10. Number 9. Now, number 9, this is the biggest movie of the year. And I just don't understand why this movie did so well and why people like it. I've seen it on top 10 lists. This is a movie that people really like. I thought it was terrible, and that is Barbie. Barbie, which was the biggest box office grossing movie of the year, and it's getting a lot of award attention. It's probably gonna get nominated for Best Picture and like Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Director, and songs and score and cost, whatever. It's gonna get tons of Oscar probably consideration. And I don't get it. It's just a goofy comedy that's supposed to be this liberal feminist ideology or something like that. And I guess that's why they like it, because it's this liberal feminism or whatever. Girls are good, bad, guys are bad kind of storyline. Um, and I guess part of the problem for me is that I don't care about Barbies. I'm a guy, never played with Barbies, could care less about Barbies. Now, if you're a girl, you love Barbies. You grew up, most girls grew up, at least my generation, you grew up, my sisters did, you grew up playing with Barbies. And I know there's girls out there like so excited about this movie Barbie, because they're like, oh, movie about a doll that I used to play with, which is interesting because I guess GI Joe comes out. I'm like, oh, I used to play with GI Joes. That's fine. I can kind of get into GI Joe because I played with GI Joes as a kid, so I get it. Just Barbie I feel like was made for girls more than for guys, and maybe that's just me, but it made a lot of money, so I guess guys went and saw it. I don't know. To me, it was like, this was just not made for me. This was made for women, and it's about women issues and stuff like that. And it just didn't appeal to me as a guy, I guess it would be my thing about it. And I just didn't find it funny at all. It's a comedy that wasn't funny. And like I said, there's nothing worse than a comedy that's not funny, I guess. And to me, there's maybe a couple funny Mara moments. Any of the funny moments was because of Ken. Ken had some the fight scene between the two Ken groups. That was the best part of the movie for sure. There's some funny stuff there. I can kind of get, and it was a fun musical number. In fact, I was hoping this whole movie would be a musical. That's why I was kind of interested in it at first. I was like, oh, like of course, like how do you make a movie after Barbie? Barbie is just a doll. It doesn't have a storyline to it. You have to make up a storyline, and this was the best they did. It was like, wow, this is the best you did. You need to go back to the drawing board. There's got to be a better story out there than this one. But so you try to make up a story of a character that's just an action figure or whatever, and put him in this. Yeah, I didn't like the plot at all. I thought it was one of the stupidest plots I've ever seen in a movie. The whole idea behind this, just I didn't care for. I forget what I was trying to say. I was talking about trying to be a comedy. Oh, I thought if it was going to be a campy musical comedy, I can get on board. And I go, okay, if it can be funny, if they have some cool musical numbers and dance numbers, like maybe I can be entertained by this movie. But it really wasn't that. So, and I just didn't get the whole Barbie world. They're in the Barbie world, and like Barbie at the very beginning, she jumps off of her. Of course, all the Barbies have their Barbie dream houses. All the Kens, I guess, are homeless. I don't think they have a house to sleep in because there's no Ken dream house. But the Barbie at the beginning, Margot Robbie is Barbie. She jumps off her house and she floats in the air like there's no gravity, like she's flying in the air. And I'm like, what's going on? There's Barbies have magical powers. I don't get what's going on here. It's the only time that I think it happens. But I'm like, they can fly? Well, this doesn't make sense. And they go to the beach, and the water's made out of plastic, and they're all like have surfboards. But I'm like, nobody's surfing. The water's like made out of plastic. What's going on here? I don't get why they're going to a beach where there's no water. It just didn't make any sense to me. And the whole Bible, and then the whole plot. Okay, the plot is, from what I saw, was what I can make sense of is that the Barbies in the Barbie world are manifestations of real Barbie dolls that are being played in the real world by girls or whatever. And so, but whatever thoughts those girls have affect the Barbies in the Barbie world. So if your kid is playing with this Barbie and she has positive thoughts, then that Barbie will be positive in the Barbie world. But if I'm turning because I'm like, this is so stupid and trying to make sense of this, but so if a girl is playing with the Barbie and she has negative thoughts, then the Barbie in the Barbie world is going to have negative thoughts. It's just the most stupidest thing. I don't know. I didn't care for that whole idea. And so she's thinking about death because the girl, or who's the mother now, is thinking about death because she's depressed or whatever. She's a grown woman and all this anyways. And so she has to go to the real world, and I don't get how the Barbie world, the real world exists in the same plane. Like, how does they get from one? It's almost like two alternative universes, but somehow they get from Barbie world to the real world, and the real world people go into the Barbie world, and all they do is go in. I don't know. They go in one place, and they're like on a boat, and they're in space at one point, and they're on bikes, and then all of a sudden they're in the real world. It's just, and one of the what really got me was that they get into the real world, and then Will Ferrell's the CEO of Barbie, I guess, in the real world in this movie, and he knows about the Barbie world. And I'm like, how do people in the real world know about this alternative universe, the Barbie world? That makes no sense to me. I just can't get any sense out of that. And at one point, they're like the CEO executive people, the executive people need to get to the Barbie world, and Will Ferrell just says, just run in one place. Just pick a spot and just keep running. And they all get into the Barbie world. It's not really explained. They're just like, just pick a direction and run. And then all of a sudden, they're all in the Barbie world. So I was like, how did they get into the Barbie world? I don't get how this whole alternative universes work. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, and Will Ferrell, I love Will Ferrell. I mean, I didn't think he was that funny, as Norn is saying here. Will Ferrell's my least favorite part. Can't really get into his comedy. Oh, I love Will Ferrell, but that did not work for me. I think Norn liked Barbie, so I know you probably disagree with me, Norn. But that's just my feelings on it. Barbie, the cast was a banger. Actually, quite enjoyed the story arc for Barbie and Ken. Yeah, I know you liked it much more than I did. I just cannot get into this story. Plus, I'm a sucker for Ryan Gosling, and Ryan Gosling is probably the best part of the movie. And I like Margot Robbie. She's super hot. Like I watch Margot Robbie movies because she's very good looking, and she's a good actress as well. Ryan Gosling, you know, he's fun and campy in this character, and that's why he's getting a lot of recognition. I think he really got into the camp of the movie. Musical numbers were spot on. I see your point. They could have leaned heavier into the musical side. Yeah, I would have loved more really cool musical numbers. I would agree with that. Hey AJ, nice to see you. Cool that you're here. Really appreciate that. I really like your stuff. You got a lot of really good collection. You did your own top 10 and bottom 10 movies, AJ, that I saw. Um, yeah. So and Barbie, it was all this, and then at the end, it was America Ferrera had this whole speech about how bad women have it. Women have it so bad, whatever. And it's like, yeah, men have it bad too. Human beings have it bad. We all have our own issues. Men have their issues. Women have their issues. We all have their issues. So I don't really care for like, oh, look how bad women have it. It's like, okay, sure, women have it bad. Men have it bad too. We all have it bad. So I don't get this whole how it pours me. I'm a woman kind of attitude. I don't know. I didn't care for any of that. Again, it just comes down to I didn't like the plot, didn't care for the characters, and it wasn't funny. So I don't know. People love this movie. It did very well in the theater. It's one of those enigmas. I don't know. I just don't get why people like this movie. I could not get into it. And that's Barbie at number 9 on my worst list. Number 8, I think most of us can agree with this movie. I hope I can bring everybody back on this movie. Number 8 for me is Fast 10. And I can't believe there's 10 Fast and Furious movies. I feel like this should have died after 7. I think Fast and Furious 5 through 7 were good action movies. 8 through 10 have been just stupid camp movies that just need to be made. And it feels like they're running out of ideas. And the series is going nowhere. And it's just really terrible dialogue. Some of the worst dialogue. And one of the worst performances I've seen all year is Jason Momoa. I'm convinced now Jason Momoa is a really terrible actor. And I liked him in Game of Thrones. And he's fine as Aquaman. But every other movie I've seen him in, he's been terrible. Jason Momoa. When he tries to do comedy, it does not work. He cannot do comedy. He can do action movies where he takes his shirt off. He's fine. Let him take his shirt off and beat someone up. I'll watch him do that. But watch him do this character that was just a weird character, the villain character. He's trying to get revenge on the main guy. I forget their names now, but he's trying to get revenge on the main guy, and he's just very campy, over the top, and he wears weird outfits, and he's trying to be funny, but it just doesn't work for me. Jason Momoa is terrible, and I just remember it's like one scene where I swear he's like in this. I think he's going to challenge the main guy, Vin Diesel's character, to a race, because this movie is supposed to be about racing, but it just went off the rails from where it started as street racing. Now it's, they're going in space and stuff like that, but uh, in this movie, he's going to challenge him. And then I remember the scene where he has these girls, these good looking girls with him, of course. And I remember Jason Momoa like licked one of the girls' faces for no reason, just to be quirky and funny, I think. And I remember watching it going, whose idea was that? Did the director say, hey, Jason, why don't you lick that girl's face? That would be funny. Or did Jason Momoa go, hey, I think it'd be my character to lick this girl's face, out of nowhere. That would get the audience, going. And it's like, I'd be like, no, that's the stupidest idea ever. Why would you do that? Anyways, there's lots of choices where I'm like, this is such a stupid choice. And I'll say one of the worst lines I've ever heard in a movie. Again, I remember this so distinctly. They're in the like Italy or something like that, and there's a bomb that they're trying to get to, if I remember right. And I forget the black guy's character, the bald black guy. I forget his name now. Ty Diggs, is that it? Something like that. He's in like all the movies, and he's in a car and he's racing anyways. And then a nun, like in Italy, of course, very Catholic, and so anyway, a nun like walks across the street, and the character says, get out of here. This is none of your business. Get it? None of your business. Like she's a nun, and he said none, and it was the worst line I've ever heard. It wasn't funny, cringe. I remember saying that line. I went, oh my god, that's one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. That is so bad. A line, and that's the type of comedy throughout the whole series, whole movie. It's just the comedy did not work at all. Action was just over the top, of course. The storyline, nothing. It's just as bad as the last three. I think the last three Fast and Furious were all terrible movies, and this did not disappoint in that sense that it was terrible. And I see that most people are agreeing with me in the comments, so I know I'm not off on this one. First, let's see, Sen. I think she's talking about Barbie here. Yeah, I hate that nonsense. Western women are some of the most pampered, spoiled, entitled individuals in the world. Okay, well, I'm glad you said that, Sen. Since you are a woman, you can, it comes better out of you than me, so I'm glad you said that. Norn, skip Fast 10. Good on you, Norn. My favorite is still the very first one. Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. The first one, I don't know if I thought it was great. It was okay, it was all about street racing, whatever. And to me, it's Fast and Furious is all about fast cars and good-looking women. And I'm like, okay, I can get on board with that. Fast cars, good-looking women. And then it went into this whole action series, which I thought was fine at first, but now it's too much. They keep making money, so they keep making the movies. And the best part of the movies, I think, was when The Rock came in. When Dwayne Johnson came in, he was great. And I don't believe he was in this movie. If I remember right, he was not in this movie because famously, Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel do not get along. And they have it somewhere in their contract that they have to have like the same amount of screen time, I think. Or if they get in a fight, they have to be even on their punches. And it's weird. They just don't get along. And so I think that's why Dwayne Johnson wasn't in this movie. Ryan, which I talked to you just the other day. Glad to see you, Ryan. Couldn't agree more on Fast 10. Trash, yeah. You agree with me there. Why even put yourself through the torture watching fast movies? I know. Why did I do that? I knew the movie was going to be bad, but yet I'm a sucker for watching a stupid movie that I don't have to think about. Sometimes I'll put on a movie and I'll go, this movie's probably stupid, but I don't have to think. I can just watch it and just, with an empty mind and not think about it. And then I come away going, oh, this was terrible. Why did I watch this thing? I hope I'll at least have fun with these fast movies, but not really. And Sin says Jason wasn't too bad in Braven. I don't know what Braven is. That's interesting. So Jason Momoa is good in a movie called Braven. All right, number 7. Go from there to one of the worst Marvel movies I've ever seen, and that is Flash. And I know I talked about Flash with Ryan and Mike the other day, and we all agreed that was a terrible movie. So you'll agree with me, hopefully, everybody on this one. Flash. And people were excited about this. I was not, just because I cannot stand Ezra Miller. I think he's a piece of human garbage. What he did and all the crimes that he's committed and what he's done to women and kidnapped a girl, I think, at one time, and all this stuff. He should be in jail. Yet he starred in a Marvel movie this year. So I thought they should not have put this movie out. I thought this movie would bomb because nobody's going to watch a movie with Ezra Miller after all the stuff he did. And I was partly right. The movie totally bombed, and it was terrible anyways, and it didn't help that Ezra Miller was in it. And so I knew I was going to hate this movie just because of Ezra Miller. And so I didn't want to watch this one. But after it bombed big time, I was kind of happy. I was like, okay, I'll watch it. People hated it. It bombed. I'm satisfied. So I'm going to see how bad this movie is. It's one of those where I was like, I'm going to watch it just to see how bad it is. And it was bad. Ezra, I think, was terrible in the movie. You get two Ezra Millers, and the younger Ezra Miller character, he's playing the same character, but a younger version of himself. It was one of the most annoying characters ever put on screen. I just hated that character every time he was in the movie. And I just don't get the whole story of he can run so fast that he goes back in time, and then he changes things, which of course ruins the future. That whole plot that you get in movies, and I don't know. It was weird when he ran really fast. All of a sudden, he was like in this alternative reality or something, and I didn't get what was going on there. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And the whole movie is him trying to put things back to place because he ruined everything, of course. And then he's in this alternative universe, and you get, the whole thing was you get Michael Keaton's Batman, which everybody was so excited about, which I was like, I didn't really care. I'm not a big, I like Michael Keaton. I don't like Michael Keaton's Batman. I think it was one of the weakest Batman. So I'm like, who cares about Michael Keaton as Batman? I thought Ben Affleck was a better Batman. Anyways, I could use more Ben Affleck actually, which is barely in this movie. Anyways, yeah, and just I can't say too much stuff. I just didn't care for the plot, didn't care about the characters, and it was one of the worst CGI movies I've ever seen in my life. There's a scene where he has to save, this building is falling, and he has to save these, and there's a paternal ward, whatever, where babies are just in this, that room where the babies are laying down after they're born, and they're looking after them. Anyway, so these babies are falling out of the sky, and he has to save the babies. And the babies are so terrible looking. It's just the worst CGI. For a movie that's supposed to be, big CGI, it's supposed to be a big blockbuster movie, a lot of money put into this movie. CGI was terrible. The babies didn't look like real human beings, and he has to save them. Anyways, the whole scene should have been cool, but I just thought the whole time I was like, wow, this is so bad, these babies. And then at the end, I thought Supergirl was terrible. Like, I think people like Supergirl, but I was like, she does not look like Supergirl. She seemed real small, and she had the short, like black hair or whatever. And it's like, to me, Supergirl is, this good-looking blonde, and this didn't fit Supergirl to me at all. So I didn't like Supergirl at all. And every time she went to fast mode, it looked bad. I thought the CGI looked terrible every time she went really fast and stuff. Anytime anybody went fast, it was like, okay, this is terrible. And at the end, they had this whole thing where he was going back in time so much, and he was all this different, multiverses were starting to collide. And so you got all these different universes where you get different Supermans. And this is, I'm spoiling this part, but I think everybody maybe heard about this if they know anything about this movie. So they bring in these different, they have a Christopher Reeve Superman, his universe show up, and then the worst one was Nicolas Cage, who famously was going to be Superman at one time, but it never. I don't know what happened. It never happened. I remember him being on a talk show talking about being Superman, and it never happened. So it was definitely a very real thing, but then evidently it fell through. And so you get a Nicolas Cage, but it's not Nicolas Cage. It's a CGI Nicolas Cage. And it looked terrible. Nicolas Cage looked terrible, the CGI Nicolas Cage. And I remember watching going, wow, Nicolas Cage wasn't even in this movie. It's some stupid CGI character that kind of resembled Nicolas Cage. And I thought, oh, that looks so terrible. And I remember everybody talking about the bad CGI, and they even mentioned it. And I remember the director saying at one point that it it was bad CGI on purpose. He tried to save the whole movie by saying, "Oh, we meant to look that way." It's like, you meant to look like crap. You're stupid. You're a terrible director. Anyways, it was just a yeah, it was just horrible. One of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen. Number 7 is Flash. Yeah, Flash is a DC movie. Did I say Marvel? Oh, you're right. I did say Marvel. Yeah, Flash isn't. There's so many terrible Marvel and DC movies. I'm getting them mixed up. Yeah, Flash is a DC movie. It was one of the worst. I don't think I have any more superhero movies on my list, so I guess I'll say Flash was the worst superhero movie of the year, worst DC movie, the worst Marvel movie. I guess we go to Ant-Man, but I haven't seen Aquaman 2, and I haven't seen the Marvel, so take that as you will. But still, everything they've done is pretty bad. I know. 2 Ezras? That was real. I know, not just one, but you get 2 Ezras in the movie, which is even worse. I didn't care for the Supergirl chick either. Yeah, everybody loved her, but I was like, I did not care for this Supergirl. Anyways. All right. Number 6. This is a movie I just saw a couple days ago, and it made my list already. There's a couple movies here I just saw recently that made my list. And there's a lot of bad movies out there I probably still haven't seen that would make this list. But number 6 is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, which is the worst animation movie I saw this year. And I still have a couple more animation movies I haven't seen, but I've seen the big ones, I think. And this is the DreamWorks movie. And DreamWorks is a major animation studio, and they've made good movies in the past. In fact, they made a really good movie last year, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which is probably maybe one of my favorite animation movies from last year, if I remember right. And I talked to Mike and Ryan about this last night. We talked about Ruby. I told you I loved Ruby Gillman. No, I told you I hated Ruby Gillman, Mike. Yeah, we talked about it last night or yesterday. Yeah, and I don't know why I watched this movie. I thought it looked bad. Yeah, you said it exactly. It's a terrible title. Teenage Kraken. It's just yeah, just looking at the title, you're like, this does not look good at all, and it wasn't. And I don't know, I just wanted to watch it because I like wanted to catch up on all the animated movies of the year. So I had a better, so when I talk about my favorite animated movies, I can at least say, oh, I've seen, several animated movies, so I have something to talk about. So I watched this. It's DreamWorks. It should not be terrible like this, but it was terrible. Just the idea, the whole plot is that there's this Kraken family. They're Krakens. What is a Kraken? I don't even understand what a Kraken is. We've seen Krakens in movies. Sometimes they're a big octopus. Sometimes they're some kind of monster. I don't know. It's some kind of sea monster. That's all I know. This huge sea monster. So there's this family of Krakens, but the women look more like sea monsters and the men look different. And it's this whole thing, and they're for some reason they're able to shrink themselves to a normal human size, but the women can get huge. They can become these huge Kraken characters when they want to. The men can't get huge for some reason. The whole is stupid. The whole thing. The women can become these huge Krakens, and they rule. The women are the rulers of the sea, not the men, of course. And so, but anyway, so this girl, Ruby Gillman, she's a teenager and she's a Kraken, but she's trying to pretend like she's human. And it's so stupid because she doesn't look human at all. You look at all the characters, she's blue. She's blue, she has weird ears, she's just a weird body type. Her body just looks weird compared to the humans. The humans all look like human characters. So it's like, how did they should know. They should look at her and go, you're not human. You don't look human. This family does not look human. And yet they're supposed to try to look like they're human. Anyways, fit into this human world. Anyways, it's just that doesn't make any sense. And so we're just following this girl who's, feels like an outsider because she's not human, trying to fit into the human world. And she even has a crush on this human boy, which I'm like, why would a Kraken be attracted to a human? They're two different species. I never like interspecies relationships. I've never been into interspecies relationships. I always hated that about movies. If two different species fall in love, I'm like, no, you love your own species. That just makes sense. Not other species. I would never fall in love with a fish person. I just wouldn't. I just not attracted to fish people. I'm attracted to humans. Anyways, but yeah, so I didn't get that at all. And then the whole plot where it turns out, oh, she finds out, oh, she never knew she can get big. And then it's like, oh, I can become this huge Kraken villain. And then she meets her grandma, who's like the queen of of the ocean. And they have a rival with mermaids. Anyways, and then this one girl shows up, and I'm like, oh, she's the villain. And she ends up being the villain. Like, I knew as soon as she showed up, I'm like, oh, this girl, she's got to be like the villain who's trying to take over the ocean, you know. And that's what happens. I predicted the whole movie within the first 10 minutes of the movie. It's just the most predictable movie you've ever seen. Wasn't really that funny. They bring in this silly character that's supposed to be funny, and he's just annoying again. I was like, these characters are just annoying, not funny at all. And overall, the animation was terrible. It was the character designs were terrible. The overall animation was terrible. I mean, we had some really good animated movies this year, which I'll be talking about in my top 10 list, that were really well animated. Animation has gone really, really good. And you put out this crap, I mean, come on. And Puss in Boots was really well animated. And you put out this Gilman movie, like this must have been a trash movie that they like didn't have any ideas, and they're like, well, we got to put something out. So we're gonna put out this Ruby Gilman movie out, and hopefully the next one's better. And hopefully they just had to put this in just to fill out, just to stall everybody. Like, oh, here's a movie until we come up with another movie. Hopefully the next one's much better than this one. It's just a throwaway movie they put out there. Because I remember it kind of came and went. Like, it did nothing in the movie theater. It totally bombed. Nobody talks about it, and for good reason. I don't think it was advertised either. I think they just kind of, uh, you know, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, anyways, yeah, it, it was terrible. And DreamWorks should be doing better. Let's see, Abby, I'm not attracted to the fish piece. That's what I said. Yeah, that's my quote. I should write down some of these things you say, make a collage. Yes, you can quote me on that. I'm not attracted to fish people. I'll stand by that. Anyways, yeah, 6, Ruby Gilman. I think the worst animated movie. I think it was just terribly animated, designed, plot-wise, everything did not work. All right, number 5. And I didn't plan it this way, but this really fits the number 5 spot. And this is another movie I saw this last week, and that is Five Nights at Freddy's. And I talked about this with Mike and Ryan yesterday as well. As I saw this last week, and I was like, yeah, this is one of the worst things I've seen. It's fit into number 5 on my list. And I say that, and a lot of people like this movie. In fact, I hate talking about this movie only because when I talk about how I didn't like it, people try to defend this movie, and then I have to get into a whole discussion of trying to explain to me why the movie's not that bad. And it's like, no, the movie was bad. You can't explain to me that this movie was not bad and didn't make any sense, and I didn't get any of this movie. At the end, I'm like, I don't get what happened in this movie. And it's based off a video game I've never played, where you're a security guard at this kind of Chuck E. Cheese style restaurant with these animatronic characters that play instruments and sing and all that. But the animatronics come alive at night, and then they try to kill you. That's the whole video game. I know from what I know. It's supposed to be jump scares and all that. And so I don't know. I was kind of intrigued by this. I thought, maybe it'd be kind of a not a super scary movie, but kind of a thriller. There's going to be some jump scares. He's going to be running away from something. I like movies where you're running away from something trying to kill you. That's exciting. That can get me going. So I was kind of like interested in it. And just the plot, I thought I didn't get the plot. I know Mike tried to explain the plot to me. And so and Mike had to say, I assume this happened. And I guess that's what he had to do. It doesn't explain how things work. You just have to assume things happened off screen. I suppose if you do that, if you assume things happen, maybe you make sense out of the movie. But I feel like the movie should tell you kind of what happened, or kind of explain to you what's going on here. And I feel like nothing was explained. This guy's trying to get a job because he has his parents are dead or something like that. and he has a brother who got kidnapped when he was a kid, and he has a little sister, which I don't know. Did they explain who the little sister was? She was like, I'm guessing she was like a half stepsister or something like that. Like her parents probably got divorced, and because she was way younger than him, Josh Hutcherson's character, the main character. Anyway, so he's got legal guardianship over this little sister who's much younger than him, and he really shouldn't be taking care of her because he's having trouble even keeping a job. Like I don't know how he pays for everything. Um, you can assume maybe Mike has an assumption there he can help me with, but somehow he's paying for everything, and I don't know, he just doesn't seem like he should have custody over this girl. The whole time I'm thinking, the whole thing is like, oh, he's going to lose custody of his sister, which they don't even get along. They fight all the time. So I'm like, yeah, give her away to somebody. Like you should not be taking care of this girl. You're not capable of being a guardian over it. Anyway. So I was like, I wasn't into that at all. And so he gets this job being a security guard at a business that doesn't run anymore. I still don't get that. If I'm looking for a job and they're like, yeah, be a security over this abandoned building. I mean, I guess that's easy money. I guess be like, yeah, sure, easy money, I guess. You don't have to do anything because it's an abandoned building. You just don't want people to, I guess, break into the building. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'd be questioning that. Like, why am I a security guard at an abandoned building? This doesn't make any sense. Why that would be a job and why he would take it. And there's this whole thing where he has dreams of when his brother gets kidnapped and he's trying to, remember like who the person was or something like that. He's trying to put things together, and it's like you dream one dream, and that's the only time you're going to dream it. Basically, every dream is going to be somewhat different. The fact this guy's dreaming the same dream is like, okay, that makes no sense. That's not how dreams work. And then he starts interacting with these kids in the dream that show up. And why do these kids show up? Why do these kids show up in the dream? I don't get it. Except it's magic, I guess. Everything's magic. And so these kids are showing up, and he's talking to them and trying to figure out if they can give him information about his brother that got kidnapped or whatever. Which that happened so long ago. I mean, your brother's dead. What can you do? But he's trying to get information out of them. And of course, then he finds out that during the course of the movie, he finds out these animatronics come alive, anyways. And we do get maybe the only interesting scene in the whole movie is some people break into the place, try to get him fired, and they get killed by the animatronics. And that was probably the best part of the movie, is getting killed by the animatronics. But then they become friends with the girl, with the sister, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're nice, and they build a fort and they play games, and it's like, what is this movie? I don't get what's going on in this movie. And there's this whole girl who's a police officer, and she's of course the most attractive female you ever seen, which I don't see that many attractive female officers out there. So I'm always like, it just doesn't fit to me. This pretty blonde police officer. No offense to police officers, but I always question that. And then she spends her whole time hanging out with this guy at this abandoned building, and it's like, don't you have police work to do? You have nothing to do but hang out with this stranger that you met for the first time at this place. Anyways, and I know later on in the movie they explain why she's there. I get that. Still, she's a police officer, right? That's her job, right? Should she be fired? She's a terrible police officer. Plus, she lets really bad things happen to kids. She's a terrible police officer. She should not be a police officer. And the fact that she is just bothers me. It's hard to talk about the movie without spoilers, but there is supernatural things that happen that I guess you just go, oh, this is a supernatural movie, I guess. I don't know why. I guess I just couldn't get on board with all that. Like, oh, things just happen coincidentally because it needs to happen to make the movie happen. And that just doesn't work for me. Things need to make sense for me to really get into the movie. And so, I don't know. To me, I didn't like the characters, did not like the plot. So stupid. The ending just didn't make any sense to me. I know it made sense to you, Mike. I know you're going to tell me why it made sense. It did not make sense to me. I'm sorry. But yeah, did not get this movie at all. Five Nights at Freddy's, number 5, which fits because it's 5 nights. It's number 5 on my list. Worst movie of the year. All right, number 4 on my list is a Netflix movie that I don't know how many people have seen this movie. I've never seen it advertised. I just caught it on Netflix one day and thought, hey, this could be fun. And it's called Old Dads. Old Dads, which is a directorial debut of the comedian Bill Burr. Um, Bill Burr is a very funny comedian. He's one of my favorite stand-up comedians. He's one of those comedians who says things that are controversial and you shouldn't be saying, but yet he gets away with it and he's very funny at it. And that's why he's funny, because he's not afraid to talk about certain issues that, would usually get you canceled. And so it's fun to hear him rant about things, to get mad. His whole humor is getting mad at things and ranting, anyways. And anyway, so this is his first movie he directed, and I think he wrote, and he stars in it. So I'm like, all right, I'm willing to give someone a chance. He's a very brilliant joke writer. So can he write a screenplay? Is the question. Can he direct a movie? And this movie kind of proved he can't. And the whole idea of the movie is Old Dads. Is Bill Burr is like in his 50s, and he's got his two friends who are also like in their 50s, and they all have younger wives or girlfriends, and they have kids by them. So they're old dads because they're having kids at an older age in life. So the whole idea, is that they're in the 50s, so they have they're I don't know what 50s people are, if that's Gen X or whatever. So they've got this old school of parenting and looking at the world, and then it's contrasting between younger people, the Gen Zers, who are much more liberal and woke. And so it's this whole idea of the contrasting the 50-year-olds from like the 20-year-olds, anyways. And that joke really got old really fast in the movie. And there's a couple of parts where it's like, okay, this sounds like a little bit of Bill Burr's stand-up comedy. I kind of can get on board with him, making fun of Gen Zers, because I'm a millennial. I'm an old millennial, so I'm totally with making fun of Gen Zers, because, there's a thing. You think your generation's the best generation, you make fun of other generations. I get that. That's, we all feel like our generation's the best generation. And so this whole thing is just, Bill Burr kind of ranting on younger generations, and at times it's like, okay, like the joke gets old. It's like, okay, I get it. You're from a different generation, and and all the Gen Zers are all stupid, but it's like, not all Gen Zers are terrible. There are some terrible Gen Zers, and there's terrible millennials and probably terrible Gen Xers, whatever. We all have our problems as a generation. Though generations do seem to get worse. Every generation seems to get worse. Uh, Anyway, so that's the whole idea behind it. And the whole thing is like he owns like a company with his friends, and then this young Gen Zer is taking over the company because he's like this rich young person, and then their philosophies contrast because of their ages. Anyways, but the whole movie, it wasn't really that funny. There's maybe a couple funny bits with Bill Burr, but for the most part, again, it's a comedy that did not work, I think, as a comedy. And it's just a mess. I have this low because just the script kind of went off the rails about halfway through, and a couple things happened, and then became this different movie. And at the end, I don't know, all these different things happened where I'm like, felt like the movie didn't know where it was going. Like script wise, it felt like it kind of had a very one note premise and didn't really know where it wanted to go. And it came to an end. And you're like, okay, that's the end. Like, I feel like it didn't really get to that ending very well. So I just think it was really badly written script. And again, it's just Bill Burr didn't know how to write a script yet. Maybe his next movie, maybe he'll learn from this and maybe he'll make a better movie. But I don't know why anybody would give him another chance. Maybe, but we'll see. I do like Bill Burr as an actor. He was in The Mandalorian. I thought he was very good in Mandalorian. And I've seen him in different movies and small parts, and I think he does a very good job. He's actually not a bad actor, and he was fine as the lead in this movie. I think he can do lead acting. I just don't think he needs some more work as a screenwriter, I think, is the main problem. Because I would love to see something good from him. Old Dads just didn't work for me. There's not much more to say than that. It's just a comedy that didn't work, wasn't well written. So I have it number 4, Old Dads. Now I'm running out of water, so I'm going to have to get more water here. All right, number 3, worst movie of the year. movie that you maybe forgot came out this year. It didn't come out in theaters. It came straight to Disney Plus. Again, I thought this movie probably looked bad, and I watched it because I thought I want to see how bad this movie is, and it was bad. And it was Peter Pan and Wendy, which is kind of a remake of another live action remake of a blessed cartoon or animated movie, Peter Pan. And I'm not the biggest fan of Peter Pan, to be honest. I was a big fan when I was a kid. I like Peter Pan because Peter Pan was kind of a fun character, very adventurous, got in sword fights, and he had the whole pirate thing with Captain Hook. Was a really good villain. I have to say, really well, one of the best villains of Disney animation with the hook and everything. It was a great character design. This kind of live action remake. It's a different take, it feels like, too, on the story, where they have Hook and Peter Pan were like peers, and they grew up together, and they were basically like he was part of the Lost Boys. Hook was, I guess, as a kid, but then they got into an argument or something like that, and Peter Pan kicked him out of the Lost Boys group, and then he resented them, and then he grew up to be this terrible pirate Hook who tries to kill Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. So it's a different take on the whole story. It's like, okay, I don't know if that's I don't think that definitely wasn't in the original. I don't think, and of course, originally it was a play, anyways, written by J.M. Barrie, I believe. And so I don't know, it was a weird take on the whole thing. But the thing that makes it so bad is this is the worst Peter Pan I've ever seen in my life, and it's obvious they got this kid who's like Indian or whatever. He's Middle Eastern looking kid, and of course Peter Pan's always white. A lot of times he's played by a girl. But he's always white, and this time they're like, oh, we, again, want to race swap the main character and not be white. So they bring in this Indian character, which is like, okay, if he's a good actor, he fits Peter Pan well, then I guess we'll try to make that work. But I thought his performance was terrible. He didn't look like Peter Pan. He didn't act like Peter Pan. It was just the worst performance I've ever seen on a Peter Pan character. And there's been some decent Peter Pan movies out there. There's a Peter Pan movie back in the early 2000s, live action, that I think actually worked decently. And then you got the original, of course. But yeah, I just thought it felt to me like they race swapped Peter Pan for diversity reasons and not for quality reasons. And I hate that. You should only do that because you saw this actor and you thought, hey, this actor is really good. He fits the character. But he did such a terrible performance that I have to believe that there's like, we just need to get someone who's not white and put him in this role. And we don't care who it is as long as he's not white. And so they put this kid in, play Peter Pan, and he just did a horrible job. And then the whole thing that's called Peter Pan and Wendy, because you can't just have Peter Pan. You have to have Wendy be a major part of the movie. I mean, she was already a major part of the movie, but now we're going to put her as like the main character, not Peter Pan, because it needs to be more about women power, not men. And in fact, Peter Pan never saves Wendy. I should say it's about Little Mermaid. One of the things I hate about Little Mermaid is that in the animation movie, Eric saves the day and kills Ursula and saves Ariel. In the live action Little Mermaid, Ariel saves the day and kills Ursula and saves Eric. They switched the whole story around because guys can't save girls anymore. Girls have to be the heroes and save the guys, and it's just done for political reasons, and I hate that. If you do that, it has to make sense, but it's obvious you changed it for political reasons, and that's why I just absolutely hate it. And they make this Wendy character super powerful. She's sword fighting with grown men and beating them at sword fighting, which I don't think that happened in the original. How come she's such a good sword fighter? She's sword fighting, pirates who are professional sword fighters. They do that for a living. And she's sword fighting with them and being the hero of the story, saving Peter Pan, basically. Peter Pan never saves anybody in this movie. In fact, he doesn't seem that heroic at all. They really ruined the Peter Pan character through this movie. And it was just a really boring movie. And again, had one of the worst lines. Again, I say this every time. That's why it's in my top 10 worst. Had a line that I absolutely, absolutely hated. The Lost Boys some of them are girls. That's one thing. They're called Lost Boys for a reason. Boys. They're boys. if they're not lost, if they're not boys, then they're lost children. I don't know. Don't call them lost boys if there's girls in the group. And there's never been girls in the group. It's always been boys. That's why it's called Lost Boys. But they put girls in the group, and so they still call them Lost Boys, even though there's girls. And it's in the trailer, it's in the movie, and I absolutely hate this line where Wendy says, "These are lost boys," or something like that. And Wendy says, "But you're not all boys." And one of the girls goes, he says, "Yeah, what about it?" or something like that. What does it matter? And then Wendy goes, "Well, I guess it doesn't matter." And it's like, yes, it does matter. You call them boys, and they're not boys. It doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid. It's just so stupid. I just can't put my head around it. Anyways, it's stupid stuff like that. The dialogue and this whole story plot. I even thought Hook wasn't that good. Everybody was like, "Oh, Jude Law was good as Hook," and I'm like, "No, this was the worst Hook I've ever seen." Hook is a great villain, and he was not a good villain character in this. And yeah, it was just a terrible adaptation of the story. And this came out early in the year, and I thought this was the worst movie. I have two movies above it, but for a long time, this was the worst movie of the year. And I didn't think anybody could be worse than this movie. And then I found two more. But yeah, Peter Pan and Wendy, another terrible, stupid Disney adaptation of a classic. Number 3, Peter Pan and Wendy. All right, hopefully you're enjoying some of my rants because I'm really getting into these movies and ranting about them. I know Mike likes some of my rants, so hopefully he's enjoying it. I'm running out of water, so I might have to go get some more water after I finish these last two. All right, number 2. This was my worst movie until yesterday. I just watched a movie yesterday that made my number 1 least favorite movie of the year. Number 2 was my least favorite movie of the year for a long time. I thought nothing was going to beat this movie until I saw a movie last night that beat it for number 1. And number 2 is Asteroid City, which if you're maybe not even remember what that movie is, but it was a Wes Anderson movie that came out this year. And I can't even explain the plot. The plot is so confusing and didn't make any sense to me that I can't even explain what happened, except they're in this city called Asteroid City, I guess. And this like, I think there's a boy who's like a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout, and they're talking about space or something like that. And there's a scene where an alien comes down, and it's a really weird animated alien. This UFO comes down, the alien comes out, and they leave something for him. I can't remember what happens. So it just didn't make any sense. And so there's this alien kind of plot line in there. It's not really that big of a plot line though, but it's a weird part of the movie where like, what's going on here? And it's Wes Anderson. It's supposed to be very quirky, kind of comedy stuff. Like the characters are definitely very quirky and weird, like you would have in a Wes Anderson movie. And it did not work for me. None of the characters worked for me. It was not funny. I didn't laugh one bit. It's supposed to be a comedy, but I didn't find anything funny. In fact, I just despised the dialogue. And Wes Anderson, he can write a good, funny dialogue movie, and I like some of his stuff. Lately, he's been putting out some of the worst stuff I've seen, and I hate that because he was on such a great role as a screenwriter, especially. And I'll say, like, with what's it called? Something Moon. I can't remember now the movie. Moonrise Kingdom. Moonrise Kingdom. It was my favorite Wes Anderson movie. I think a really good comedy, very quirky, of course. A really fun movie. I really liked Moonrise Kingdom, and I thought, wow, this guy's really on something. And I liked the movie before. Some of his movies I think are terrible. Some are really good, like that one, Moonrise Kingdom. I know Abby, she's not. I don't know if she's in the chat anymore, but I know there's one that you like a lot that I like quite a bit as well. With Gene Hackman, I thought that was a good movie. And then you got Moonrise Kingdom, really good. And I'm like, oh, I'm really on this. And he does like the Fantastic Mr. Fox. I thought it was a really good movie. It's a really good stop motion animation movie. And then he does the Grand Budapest Hotel, which was his biggest movie to date. It was nominated for Best Picture. It got lots of Oscar. It won like 3 Oscars or something like that. And he might have even got nominated. I don't know. It was definitely his most well-received movie, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which I liked a lot. I thought it was very good. I liked the characters. It was very funny. Interesting movie. And I was like, man, at that point, I was like, man, I'll watch anything Wes Anderson puts out because he's on such a big role. He does the Isle of Dogs, which I thought was okay. Wasn't crazy about it, but still, I was like, I really like his dialogue. His screenwriting is just so unique. And then he puts out The French Dispatch like a year ago. And I remember being excited. I'm like, oh, a new Wes Anderson movie. Like, because he doesn't make a lot of movies, I feel like. He's not like the most prolific director. But I remember he made French Dispatch, and I was like, oh, real excited about it. And I watched it, and I was like, wow, this is like the worst Wes Anderson movie. Like, it didn't work at all. The movie, the plot, I didn't care for. It was like three different movies in one, and it was almost too quirky. Like, he's gotten almost too quirky. And the same thing with Asteroid City. This was even worse, I think, than French Dispatch. This is the worst Wes Anderson movie, and it just did not work. It was so boring, it was stupid. The dialogue didn't work. The characters didn't work. It was just like he's gone too quirky. He needs to bring back the quirkiness of the dialogue or something, or in the characters, and come up with better story ideas. His story ideas have just been terrible the last two movies, and it just didn't make any sense a lot of times. I didn't understand what was going on during the movie because I didn't want to try to explain it. It just, you had to watch it. It just didn't make any sense. And yeah, I just thought it just totally missed the mark on what Wes Anderson can do. I'd love to see Wes Anderson do another good movie because I like it when he comes out with a funny storyline, but this just was not one of them. It was just really boring. It's hard to get through. So that's number 2, Asteroid City. All right, number 1, my least favorite movie that I've seen so far this year. I just watched it last night, so I'm some recent biasness. And again, it's different than the second movie. Asteroid City, I have there because it was just boring, made no sense. Uh, yeah, this movie wasn't necessarily boring. It had some interesting scenes. It had some interesting characters. This is number 1, mostly because at the end, I was very upset at the ending of the movie. I hated the ending. It was kind of a shocker. I didn't see the movie going there. And so I had to put number 1 just because I felt upset at the end. And I didn't feel upset at the end of these other movies, but this movie, I was generally upset. And that is Saltburn, which you might have heard of, came out recently. And if you heard anybody talk about it, I know Sin, I don't know if Sin might not be in this chat anymore, but Sin, I first heard Sin talk about this movie, Sin's Corner, and she talked about how much she did not like this movie and that it was gross and all this stuff. And that's the first time I really heard anything about the movie. And then I was like, oh, this sounds terrible. But it's getting some award. And yes, thank you. I'm glad. I hope you were in there. Yeah, you hated it. I hated it, Sin. And Mike liked it. Mike from Did He Say That liked it. I think Ryan Swell said he liked it. So a lot of people like this movie. Me and Sin are a little more, I think we dislike the same movies because she's agreeing with me on most of these. But yeah, there's Ryan. He's probably like, what? It's also my top 10 worst list. And of course, it's getting award talk. Yeah, it's going to get some. It could get in Best Picture. You know, it could get some stuff there. I feel like it could be on the outside looking in on Best Picture and some of the other Oscars, but definitely one that's considered. And it's a weird movie and it's gross, and that's all very true. And if you hear anybody talk about it, they'll probably say that. And that's why I was like, I don't know. I didn't think I would like the movie. I didn't realize I would hate it so much as I do after I saw it. And it's hard to talk about the movie without talking about spoilers because a lot of crazy stuff happens really towards the back half of the movie. The first half actually is not that bad. It's like, okay, where's this movie going? I don't really quite understand what this character is. Barry Keoghan plays the main character, Oliver, who goes to Oxford, and he's like supposed to be like this really smart kid, but he's very awkward and like shy, introvert character, which is not a fun character to. Maybe my first big problem is just that's not a fun character to be your main character and to watch because they're like, this character has no charisma. Like, I just don't like this character. Anyways, he gets fascinated by this other guy named Felix, who's from a very wealthy family. He's like a really good looking guy. And again, I don't quite understand how he seems obsessed with this guy, I guess in a sexual manner. It seems like but yeah, he likes girls too, I think. So maybe he's bisexual. I don't know if he's gay or bisexual or what's going on. Why he's obsessed with this Felix character, but he seems obsessed with him. he kind of gets to be buddy buddy with him. And this Felix guy has this. He's from this rich family who has this huge mansion called Saltburn. That's why it's called Saltburn. And so this is almost like 45 minutes in there. It's at least 45 minutes in the movie before you get to Saltburn. And that's where stuff really starts happening. So it's kind of a slow build. About first 40 minutes, like kind of a slow build till you get to Saltburn. And then it's a cool house. The best part of the movie is the house is really cool. It's this cool old English manor, which is cool because I like old, European stuff. It's very cool. So he goes and he meets the family and all these other quirky characters, I guess, somewhat quirky characters in this. And they kind of just hang out and have fun. They're playing tennis in tuxes for some reason. They're laying in a field naked for some reason. Anyways, I guess they're just having fun and stuff like that. And anyways, and then the movie turns. I say more than halfway through the movie just turns and becomes a different movie and totally surprised me. And I did not see where the movie was going. And then when it starts going there, I'm like, what is going on? I don't get what's going on. And I can't say what happens, but some crazy stuff happens in this mansion. And some bad stuff happens. And again, I hated the main character was terrible. He was a terrible, and I didn't get it. Sometimes he would be introverted and sometimes he'd be extroverted. So I didn't get maybe he's, again, someone could say, I just don't get what's going on, but maybe he's faking being introverted. I don't know. I didn't quite understand what was going on. Was he sexually obsessed with this Felix character, or was he just admire him, or did he just fall in love with his family and want to be part of the family? I don't know what was going on here. But then some stuff happened. You find out that he's not a good person. I guess I'll just say that the main character Oliver is not a good person. I'll just say, and the movie totally goes off left field. And I won't say exactly what happens. There's just some gross sexual stuff that happened. I'll just say that. I think that's all I need to say. And I don't say what happens, but some sexual scenes that were gross. And sexual in nature, I guess I should say. It was very gross. Happens in the movie. And yeah, definitely off-putting. You're definitely watching and going, I didn't need to see that. I didn't need to have that in a movie. I really do not like these characters. And anyways, the character does some bad stuff. And you're thinking, oh, this character is a psychopath and should be in jail. And you're thinking something hopefully bad happens to this guy because he's a very horrible human being. But he doesn't get any kind of nothing bad happens to him. He kind of wins in the end. And it's one of those, it's like you're watching a movie where a guy is, trying to catch a psychopath. But in this movie, the psychopath is your main character and he wins in the end. And it's like, no, that's not what a movie should be. The bad person, the villain in the movie, should get justice, should be captured, should be killed, should be something. Not win in the end, not overcome the other people, whatever. It's just totally backwards what a movie should be. And to me, it's like a movie, you should come out of a movie feeling satisfied and happy with it and feeling entertained. And this movie, I felt upset. I was just very upset at the end. I was like, I did not like the way this movie ended. I hated that it ended this way. I hated what the character did. I hated that he didn't get justice. And that's not what a movie should be. This is not why you make movies. You don't make movies to upset your audience. That's the opposite of what a movie should be. This doesn't know how to be a movie. Basic movie writing. It does not know how to do basic movie stuff. And so I have to put this number one because it's the most upset I've been after a movie this year, where I just came up going, I'm just so upset. This is a movie, but I'm mad now. Now I'm in a bad mood. A movie should put you in a good mood, not a bad mood. This movie put me in a bad mood. And so that's why it has to be number one on my list. Because none of the other movies, even though they were terrible, I didn't like them. They had a lot of problems. I didn't come away feeling in a bad mood. I was in a bad mood after this movie last night. And it's still one of those movies after it's over, like, you just think about, like, wow, that was so bad. Like, I cannot believe that movie did that and went that way. And yeah, you're just like, yeah, that was just a terrible, terrible waste of time in a movie. Why am I watching this movie when all this stuff happens? It's just, and I know Sin said this, which I didn't realize until she said this today, or in her review, that the director is this female director named Emerald Fennell, and she made a movie a couple years ago called Promising Young Woman, and I saw Promising Young Woman, and I hated that movie. I gave that movie half a star, and I was very upset at the end of that movie. In fact, I remember watching that movie and at the end being very upset and being very mad and being in a really bad mood after that movie. Saltburn did the exact same thing. So this is one of the worst directors out there. She makes these movies that make you upset, and that's, I guess, people like the movie. So I guess some people like being upset and being in bad moods. I don't. So I watch this movie and I go, man, I was just like Promising Young Woman. It's just horrible. It's just horrible screenwriting. I should say the dialogue's not bad. There's some fun dialogue in there, uh, but the overall story arc is just terrible in both movies. I hated both of them, and so I come away going, I never want to see another Emerald Fennell movie. She's just the worst director out there. For me, she makes movies that I don't like, I should say. Some people like him. I do not like him. So I suppose if she made another movie and I saw it, it'd probably be my worst of the year again. I just have no faith that this director can make a good movie. Um, After watching these two movies of hers, only two movies I've seen of hers. Um, I know I got a lot of comments. I'll kind of get through these. Trying to tell you what I think without spoiling too much. Uh, Spoiler I'll say is that if you want to see Barry Keoghan naked, this is the movie for you. You will see Barry Keoghan naked, and I didn't really care to see him naked personally, but it's like, okay, now I know what he looks like naked. Okay, that's on my bucket list. I can put that off my bucket list now. Um, Ryan, I know Ryan, you like the movie. I don't know. No, Jason Petrell, I get it, man. I really wasn't liking it third way through. And the grave scene was a step too far. Yes, the grave scene is probably the worst scene of the movie, and I don't want to say what happens. Just know that it's not good. It's someone is naked on top of a grave. I'll just say that. Take it where you will. All right, Sen. Because of stuff I heard about the movie beforehand, I knew that what was coming, and a lot of stuff seemed like it was put in there for shock value. Exactly, it's definitely trying to be very shocking, I think. Just like pretty much all of the characters. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. It's just really terrible characters. That is the scene I'm referring to when I say I hope that the actor was wearing a sock. Yes, I get that. You said that the other day, and I didn't understand what you meant by that. Now I do. Yeah, there's a very, very weird grave scene for sure. That really had me on verge of being out of it. Okay, so you agree, Ryan? I can definitely see why people don't like it. I actually feel maybe something wrong with me. Like it just be. Yeah, and I've never seen American Psycho, and I don't want to watch that movie. But yeah, if you like American Psycho, this might be a movie for you. I would agree with that because I know similar stuff happened in that movie. Way too much bodily fluid going on for me to appreciate. Exactly, I'll agree with that 100%. I don't really care to. I don't need to see a lot of bodily fluids. That's for sure. Uh, yeah, hated that movie too. Talking about Promising Young Woman. I know we both are on board, me and Sen, on these two movies. I sworn off that director at this point. Yeah, me too. I do not want to watch this director anymore. All right, there you are, Mike. I was wondering if you would chime in. I can't agree about Saltburn. Yes, I know you like the movie, and I knew I probably wouldn't like the movie, and yet I watched it, and I was like, yeah, it was terrible. Like I said, I think the performances weren't bad. It wasn't a bad performed movie. The dialogue wasn't terrible for the most part. You know, the cinematography was good. There's some good things about this movie, but the fact that I was mad at the end, I had to put it number one worst movie I've seen because I'm not supposed to go away from a movie feeling upset. I'm supposed to feel good at the end of a movie. That's just me. Um, Sorry, Jason. I just recorded my top 10 worst movies list and had to do it 3 times. That's my audio. Oh, okay, well, that's fine, Mike. I'd be interested in seeing your top worst movies as well. All right, so that's my top 10 worst movies of the year. Hopefully, you had some fun in my not liking these movies and distress and disagreeing with me on some of these. Um, I think I should have just taken D movies. Yeah, I agree. All right, now I'll get to my top 10 favorite movies. But before I do that, I need to get some more water because my throat is getting kind of. So please bear with me. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab some water. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I just knew I couldn't go on with the way my throat was feeling. All right, you got to separate the extract for a bit. Okay. Okay, that's fine, Sen. Thanks for viewing in my worst favorite movie or least favorite movies of the year. Appreciate anybody watching this. I got 5 viewers. Already going, wow, hour 45 just on my worst list. So this is going to be a long stream. Uh, so sorry about being so long, but I really want to talk about why I didn't like movies or I like them. I probably should have done 2 different streams, but I don't know. Just want to get both lists out there. All right, top 10 favorite movies of the year. First, I'll start with honorable mention. And this will be definitely some movies that people will be like, what? This was. I think I definitely have some movies that I like that a lot of people didn't like. I definitely different on a lot of these than a lot of people reviewing movies. I don't know why I like movies that people don't like. And there's some probably questionable movies here, but I don't know what to say. I quite enjoyed them. So first honorable mention is kind of an action movie that came out early this year. It was the first movie I think I saw that I kind of liked, and that was Plane. In fact, I think it was the first movie I saw this year, and that was Plane. Very simple title with Gerald Butler and Mike Coulter, I believe, in the leads. And it's a simple movie, but I thought it was done very well. It's about Gerald Butler's the pilot of a plane, and it crash lands like on an island. So the first half of the movie feels like it's like a plane disaster movie where the plane's having trouble, whatever, and he's got to figure out how to land it, and all this. So yeah, you've had different plane movies and stuff, and that stuff was done very well. And then the second half is they're on this island, and then there's these villains, these guerrilla warfare type, bad people that then kidnap some of the people, and then Gerald Butler and Mike Coulter's character are trying to save the people that are. So it becomes kind of an action movie. There's some, gunfights and stuff. And overall, I was really, really like this movie, and it's one I think very underrated movie of the year. In fact, I don't know how many people are going to talk about it, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the action scenes were done very well. It was very well paced, and yeah, and I like Gerald Butler and Mike Coulter. I thought did really good in this movie as well. So yeah, I really recommend Plane. Let's see, Mike. All good, Jason, with your opinions. It's what makes discussions. Yep. I only tease when I mention about Ruby Gilman and Saltburn. I know. Uh, and you knew I wouldn't like Saltburn. I know you knew I wouldn't like it, and I knew I wouldn't like it, and yet I still watched it. I don't know why I torture myself. But I figure if it's going to get any work in consideration, I feel like I should watch it so I know why it's up there. Why is it? Maybe it's a hidden gem, but it wasn't. Anyways, another movie that I think is very underrated, and again, I'm the only person maybe that likes this movie, but it's Murder Mystery 2, which was on Netflix, starring Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. It's a sequel to Murder Mystery that came out a couple years ago, I think. And I watched them both back to back because I hadn't seen Murder Mystery. And Murder Mystery 2 was out on Netflix. And I thought, oh, I'll watch the first one and the second one, so I kind of get what's going on. And I didn't expect to like him because Adam Sandler has done some really bad movies. And I feel like he's put out some really bad movies lately. And so I don't have a lot of faith in Adam Sandler movies anymore. But I really like this movie. I thought it's a comedy, uh, crime solving movie. That's why it's called Murder Mystery, of course. It's all about this couple. Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston play this married couple, and they get put in a situation where someone gets murdered, and they get framed for the murder, and so then they got to try to prove that they didn't murder the person usually, and try to find the real murderer. So it's that kind. It's a very simple plot wise, but I had a lot of fun with the movie. Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston, I think, are really good together. I thought they had really good chemistry, and I thought they were funny. And Adam Sandler, he can be over the top. His comedy sometimes he gets too goofy or whatever with his comedy. He goes a little too far where it's like it's not funny. It's just too much. But I thought he had the right amount of comedy in here where he was still being funny but not over the top funny. So I thought it was the right amount of Adam Sandler in here. We didn't go too over the top. So I really enjoyed these murder mystery movies. I don't know if they're gonna make any more, but and Jeff Aniston I thought was very good in it. And I thought even the murder mystery part of it was good. Like I didn't know who did the murdering, and in fact, at the end when they reveal who the murderer is, I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So it kind of, and even and they're in Paris in this one, if I remember right. And there's a scene at the end where they're on the Eiffel Tower. It was a really fun, kind of action, scene. I guess thriller scene, whatever. Not, I mean, the comedy sense. It was a very fun movie. I'm really on board. Again, I don't know. Most people probably are like murder mystery, like who cares about Adam Sandler? But this was one of the few Adam Sandler movies where I was like, it worked for me anyway. So Murder Mystery 2 is on my honorable mention list. Uh, Here's a movie that again, no one's talked about this movie, and I can see some people not liking this movie, but I actually kind of liked it. I quite liked it, and that is a movie called Quasi, which you're like Quasi. What's Quasi? Uh, and I don't know. I don't think it was out in theaters. I want to say it might have been like a streaming movie. I caught, and this again happened maybe earlier in the year when it came out. But Quasi is short for Quasimodo. So this movie is kind of a alternative sequel to Hunchback of Notre Dame, I guess you can call it. But it's done by a comedy troupe called I think it's called the Broken Lizard. Is the comedy group, and they've done a lot of movies together. Their biggest one is Super Troopers. Came out a long time ago, like 20 years ago. That's probably their biggest movie they've done, Super Troopers. I've seen all their movies actually, and most of them are pretty terrible. Like Club Dread, I didn't think it was very good. Bear Fest, I didn't think was very good. And then I saw Super Troopers 2 recently, and I didn't think that was very good. I like Super Troopers. I think it's a funny movie, and it's the same. It's this. I said it's this comedy group that they make the same movie. They star in these movies together, and they direct one of the guys directs them, and they all make the movies together, and they write them together, and so it's kind of fun to see the same actors in these movies, and playing different characters and all this, and different plots and stuff. Anyways, so this is a movie they came out with this year, and it's actually one of my favorite that they've done. Again, it was a funny take on the Quasimodo character. In this movie, it's kind of like after what happened in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and for some reason he works as a torturer for the king. He works in the dungeons, and he's a torturer. And he has like a roommate that's also a torturer, and they're kind of friends, And anyways, and then there's this whole thing with the king and the Pope is in this movie, and they hate each other, and it's kind of a silly plot, but I thought it was very funny. It's a very silly movie. If you're in the right mood for a silly movie, I recommend Quasi. I think it's actually a real fun movie, and it had some pretty clever moments. It's definitely very rated R, very uh, crude, or we call it very some gross out comedy in there, which I'm not usually a fan of gross out comedy, but yet some of the comedy actually I thought was really funny. I thought the characters were really good, and it's over the top. It's a very over the top, silly comedy. Lots of cursing. There's lots of cursing in here and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I actually thought it was really funny, and it's one of those when I was in the right mood to watch a silly movie, and it just hit me right where I wanted it to. So yeah, I recommend it. I think it's probably the funniest movie I saw all year, to be honest. Um, I won't say much more than that. Just check it out, Quasi. Another honorable mention is one of the biggest movies of the year. Didn't quite make it into my top 10, but I thought it was very solid, and that is Super Mario Brothers, which was an animated movie. Of course, I watched the live action back in the day. Back in the 90s, I saw the live action in the theaters with Bob Hoskins. And I was a huge Mario fan. Of course, I've been playing Mario games since I was a little kid, playing Super Mario Brothers, whatever, on Nintendo and Game Boy and the Super Nintendo. And then Nintendo 64 totally, revolutionized the Mario games. Always a huge fan of Mario. So I was a huge fan of the first movie, Mario, until I grew up. And then I watched it again. I was like, oh, this is a terrible movie. But as a kid, I loved it. Uh, I don't know. When they made this, I was like, it's hard because Mario games don't really have a plot. The whole plot of Mario is Bowser kidnaps a princess and they have to save the princess. That's the whole plot. So I was like, how do you make a full-length feature film with that kind of plot? And I thought they did a pretty good job. It's not the best written movie, I think, of the year. Uh, it's got some issues, but considering they're making a movie off a video game without a plot, I thought they did actually a pretty good job. It's about the best they could do with what they've got, which is a video game without much of a plot. So I commend them that they made this movie and it did good. It was overall very enjoyable, very well paced. I liked the action. I thought the animation was good. I liked the action scenes actually, because the action scenes reminded me of playing the game. So as a old school video game player, I really got some nostalgia. Even the music cues, when different music in the score happened, I loved it because I remember that music from this video game, and I can remember the exact video game that it came from, or a character would show up, and I go, oh, I remember that character from this Mario game. So for me, I feel like Super Mario Brothers was to guys what Barbie was to girls this year. Girls grew up playing with Barbie, and so they loved it. Oh, here's a movie about the thing I played with as a kid. And Super Mario Brothers was that for me as a guy. It's like, oh, this is a movie about a video game that I used to play as a kid. And so I did enjoy that quite a bit. The ending, I mean, it was okay. Some of that didn't work. I love Bowser. I think Jack Black did a great job. I'm so gutted that Peaches is not going to get an Oscar nomination. I really want to see Peaches get an Oscar nomination for Best Song. And I'd love to see Jack Black sing that song on stage. I hope we see that at some point. That was fun. It was a fun character. I think it was, again, overall voice work was pretty good. There's a couple of weak parts there, but Seth Rogen I didn't care for as Donkey Kong, but, overall, I thought it was a really made movie off of a popular video game, Super Mario Brothers. Another movie that I liked that I didn't think I was going to like was Renfield, which I actually found myself I really enjoyed. And it was, kind of a campy comedy off of a, horror character. And I'm not a horror movie fan. I'm not a Dracula fan or anything. And the trailer even didn't look that good to me. And I was like, well, I'll check it out again. Maybe it'll be fun. And it was. It was one of those moments where I was actually very pleased at the end, where I was like, wow, that was way better than I expected it to be. It was just a fun movie. Nicolas Cage is so good as Dracula. He's hamming it up. And it works for that character. And Nicolas Cage is so good at doing these ham performances, just these very over-the-top hammy performances. And he does, and I think it works. So I thought Nicolas Cage was so good as Dracula. And I thought Nicholas Hoult was really good as Renfield. Like, Nicholas Hoult is one of my favorite actors, actually. He's not an Oscar actor necessarily, but I feel like anytime he's in a movie, I like his character. I like his portrayal. So I think it was definitely a movie where I was like, wow, this was casted pretty good, except for Awkwafina. I still think Awkwafina was terrible, but she didn't ruin the movie. I still think it was a very enjoyable movie overall. It's over the top. And one of the things I knew was going to be very violent, and I didn't. I thought I'm not going to like the over the top violence, but the violence is so over the top that I found it kind of funny. When people got their limbs ripped off and blood was spurting everywhere, I was like, okay, this is like kind of hilariously over the top violence that I could get on board with. So I didn't mind all the violent stuff that happened. Yeah, and I like the whole plot idea of Renfield trying to get away from Dracula. He's kind of in this abusive relationship with Dracula, and him becoming kind of a hero character. Yeah, I thought it was a fun idea and good. Well, most of the cast was pretty good, and yeah, it was just a really fun movie. So I recommend Renfield. Um, the last movie I'm going to recommend, I'll mention, is a movie called The Covenant, which this is one of Sin's favorite movies of the year. And I actually saw this on a plane going to Europe when I was on 10-hour flight to Europe this last summer. This was on, and I watched it, and I thought it was a very solid movie, very interesting plot. Jake Gyllenhaal, I always like Jake Gyllenhaal. He's always one of my favorite actors out there, one of the best actors today. And I forget the guy who plays the interpreter in the movie, a kind of a sporting actor in the movie, is very good in it as well. And the plot, again, it was actually a very interesting plot about uh, Jake Gyllenhaal and this relationship with this interpreter, and how he's kind of gets wounded really badly, and the interpreter has to drag him like over. They're being chased by Al Qaeda or whatever, and he has to like drag this body to safety, and it takes several days to get there. And they're like he could have just left him to die. He didn't have to save him, but the fact that he saved him, and then he goes back, he gets saved. Jake Gyllenhaal's character goes back to the United States, and then he wants to return the favor and try to help save this guy and his family. So I like the plot overall. It was a good, action thriller movie that, like, the whole friendship between the two main characters, I thought was done very well. And of course, Al Qaeda as a bad guy is always a good bad guy. You have to. How can you not hate Al Qaeda or whatever? I say Al Qaeda or whatever. Muslim terrorists. How can you not hate them? They're terrible. So great villains to have. Anyways, and yeah, thrilling towards the end. There's lots of action thrills. Anyways, very well done movie. The Covenant, very underrated. All right, Mike. Yeah, Renfield. You agree with me? That was a really fun movie. All right, get to my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Number 10 on my list, somewhat of a surprise. It was not a movie that I thought was going to be my top 10. It's a movie that's probably going to get nominated for Best Picture. And it was a movie that was described as being very slow moving. And anytime you say a movie slow moving, that's like a death nail to me. Like, I do not like slow moving movies. Yet I really like this movie, and that is Past Lives at number 10 on my list. And it's done very well as far as very critically successful. Small movie, it's an A24 movie. Like I said, I think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture, and Best Actress for Greta Lee, I think, will get nominated, which she's very good in it. Screenplay nomination, probably. I think it might miss out on Director for Celine Song, which is too bad. Love to see her get a Director nomination for this, but it's going to be hard to get in there, I think. I don't know if he can get an international film or not. I feel like it's probably not going to get that. Though it's nominated, I think, for Golden Globe International or something like that, because it has Korean and English in it. Because two of the main characters are Korean, and then there's some characters are American. Because the whole movie is this Korean girl. Her family moves to America, and she has this friend from Korea who they're childhood friends, basically. And then she moves away, and they don't see each other for a long time. They both grow up, and then they reconnect later in life, kind of over the internet. They kind of find each other, and then they kind of start, this friendship over again. And there's almost like this romantic, kind of, it seems like they're going to be romantic. At first you watch it and you're like, oh, this is like a cool romantic movie. I like this idea of these two people reconnecting, and all that. And I thought the dialogue was really well written. I thought it was a really well written movie overall. I really loved the dialogue of the movie, and I liked the characters. I thought the characters were great. And I loved the whole idea of reconnecting, anyways. And anyways, some other stuff happened. They don't actually become, a couple like you think. It actually goes in a different direction, which I kind of liked. It was different. She actually ends up marrying an American, and then the last part of the movie is really kind of the crux of the movie, where the Korean guy, I'm forgetting the names, but he flies over to America to meet her because they haven't seen each other since they were kids, and they've only talked to each other over, the computer, I guess through FaceTime, so they've seen each other maybe, but they haven't actually met each other person to person. And he flies over, meets her person to person, and there comes this whole thing of like, is there going to be a romantic thing between them, or is she going to leave her husband for this guy? And part of me was like, I like these two as a couple. They would, in a normal movie, these two people would get together, But at the same time, I don't want to. Her husband's a good guy too. That was an interesting thing. It was like, I liked her husband though, and I thought he did a really good job. I think the guy who played him, is a good character actor who I think also should have gotten an Oscar nomination, but I don't think he's not going to. But I thought he gave a good role, and I thought the main actor, I thought should get an Oscar nomination, because I think the main three really good performances. Um, but I like the fact that because I was torn, because I was like, man, I like this guy. I think they would be a good couple. But then I'm like, I don't want her to get divorced from her husband. Her husband's a good guy. So for me, I was like, I don't want to see her leave her husband for this guy, even though normally it seems like that's where the movie would go. But the movie doesn't go there, luckily. But yet there's this, they're together, and there's almost, in the whole movie, what I like about it is the whole idea of like, in another life, these two people would have gotten together and maybe got married, had kids, and it'd be in a different life. But that didn't happen. In this life, they went separate. Their paths went separate, and she married this other guy, and he's, single. And the whole movie is about, the fact that there's all these, alternative universes out there where if we made different choices, we would have different lives anyways. I feel like that's kind of the idea of the movie. And I kind of like the whole idea of that, because I feel the same way about my life. Like, man, if I would have made different choices in the past, my life today would be different. When you get at 40 years old, you think about those things, of course, and maybe you do at 30 as well. But especially the older you get, the more you think about your past and go, man, how could I have made my life different if I made different choices? But you can't, you can't think too much about that. You have to kind of get over that and just go, well, this is what my life is today. I have to make the best of what I have today. I have to be, accept what happened to me. I have to be somewhat satisfied, I guess, with my life today and the choices I made, and that's just the way my life is anyway. So I think that's kind of interesting, the whole idea of like, oh, what if I did this? What if I did that? But yet not trying to. It could be bad to think too much about, what ifs. It could be bad for you. It's fun to think of the what ifs, but then at the same time you have to go, okay, that didn't happen. That's never going to happen. The past is in the past. It's gone. I just have to make do with what I got today. And so I think that's kind of where it ends. But yeah, I thought it was a really well written movie. Again, it's not usually my type of movie. A romantic drama is not my type of movie, but yet I think this was so well done. I like the dialogue. I like the actors. It worked for me. I thought it was a really good movie. Made in my top 10 here, number 10 on my list. Ryan says he wants to get around to watching for sure. Unfortunately, I've not seen it. Yeah, I recommend it. It surprised me. It was better than I expected. Past Lives is a good movie, so good, you've seen it. However, something about it didn't connect completely with me. Okay, so I get that. I don't think it's a movie for everybody. Like I said, it's not my typical kind of movie, but here's somebody who doesn't usually like these type of movies, and it's my 10th movie on the 10th favorite movie of the year. So I just tells you how good this movie is. Even I like it, and it's getting really good reviews overall. But yeah, I recommend it. I think it's a good movie to check out. Past Lives. Number 9 is another Oscar contender, actually, that I saw a couple weeks ago. And it's kind of a movie for Christmas. It's a good movie for Christmas time because the movie takes place during Christmas. and it's called The Holdovers, which is another movie that I'm pretty sure it's going to get a Best Picture nomination, Best Actor nomination for Paul Giamatti. I'm pretty sure we'll get in there. I'm really hoping. He was great in the movie. Screenplay, probably original screenplay. Alexander Payne, the director, he could get in directing, but I don't think he will. But there's a possibility there. So it's definitely Joy Divine Joy Randolph, I think her name is, who's in this movie. I think she'll get nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and I think she'll probably win. I think she's a good contender for Best Supporting Actress. So I think this movie's going to win at least one Oscar and be nominated for several. But yeah, I found myself, this is a movie I was really kind of looking forward to. Because I love Paul Giamatti. I thought the trailer looked interesting, and it looked like it's a kind of a comedy drama. It's got some comedy in there. It's got some drama. I think it's a well-written movie. It's all overall. I like the idea of the movie is that I guess I don't know if it's a high school, but it's like one of those like all-boy high schools, where rich kids go to, and they live there in the dorms or whatever. And so it's Christmas break, and so all the kids are going back to visit their families during Christmas, except there's a handful of kids that, for every reason, can't go back to their parents for their parents are busy or whatever, and so they have to stay at the school over the Christmas break. And of course, all the teachers are also leaving for Christmas break. So the whole idea is that Paul Giamatti's this history teacher, and he's picked to have to stay during Christmas break to look after these kids and make sure they're nothing bad happens, I guess, and keep watching them. Anyways, and so that's why it's called The Holdovers. And there's the main actor, the kid actor, high schooler, who is very upset that he's not going home, and so it's all about him kind of not wanting to be there, and they don't like this teacher because he's kind of a old curmudgeon. He's not a bad teacher to me. I kind of like him, actually. He's maybe a little tough, but that's not bad. Being tough could be good because you're trying to get the best out of somebody. I don't think he's overly tough, but I mean, yeah, he's maybe a little tough on the kids. He's not maybe the most fun person at first to be around, but yeah. But anyways, but Paul Giamatti is great. Like I said, he's got some more comedic moments, which he's a very good comedic actor, but he even has some good dramatic moments as well. And I think he can do both. And I think it's perfect for this character. And I really like the character. It's actually one of my favorite characters. And most of that's because I love history. If you don't know, I have a degree from Wichita State University in teaching history. So I have a history teaching degree. I got back in 2008, a long time ago. Unfortunately, never found a job, so that's why I don't do it. But I would love to be a history teacher. That was always my dream job. So I have a bit of a I love history teachers. And so I do love this main character because he's a history teacher. And I love the fact that he's always, and again, this is me. I don't know if anybody felt this way, but I love the fact that he's always trying to teach the kids. And I feel like any situation, he try to turn it into a teaching situation. I guess I like that because that's the way I am. I like to think of, being a teaching situation. That's the way I'd like to be anyways. Always thinking about teaching people and teaching people about history and stuff like that. I love that idea. Anyways, because there's one great moment, I think, in the movie, and not to spoil anything in the movie, where he takes the kid to the one main character to like a history museum, and he shows them that this like painting or something like that, and it shows like people back in the ancient days had some of the same ideas that we have today. Like, and he kind of talks to him about the idea that we all think we invented things. We all think we're doing things for the first time, that things that we do in our life is new. And truth is, none of it is. Everything we think of was already done in the past. We just don't realize that. But if you look at the past, you go, yeah, they were human beings too. They had the same ideas and feelings and that we do today. And they, did things the same that we did today. We think we're the first, but we're not. We're just, in a long line of, people that thought the same things. Anyway, so I love the idea of connecting the present to the past kind of thing. And the idea that we're all, very similar. We're not any better than the people in the past, and so forth. Anyway, so I love that idea that he says somewhere in the movie anyways. But the movie kind of, like I said, he's looking after this kid, And at first it's like it's this, the kid is kind of annoying. He's a brat. He comes from like a wealthy family, and but then when you learn more about the character, you find out like how bad his family life is, and you feel kind of bad for him, and you really feel bad that he has to stay at school and not be at home with his family. So you do kind of feel some sympathy for the character, and the whole idea is like this two opposite people. It seems like this professor and this high school kid, who don't really like each other, but then they spend this week together during the Christmas break, and they kind of form this friendship and they form this respect, I should say, for each other, and they kind of get to know each other and realize, oh, this person's not so much different than me. I feel like this person is mean because he wants to be mean, but then you find out, oh, but he's had a difficult life and these things have happened to him, and he's much more interesting. And you also find out like, oh, this person is much more interesting than I thought. So I love the whole idea is that we have these perceptions of other people, but we don't know other people that well. And then when we get to know people, we find out, oh, we're not that different. And other people, you find out like, oh, they got some interesting stuff in their past. They got interesting stories. They're not, the, there's no reason to hate them. So I love the idea of getting to know people. And this movie, I thought that's a big part of this movie. It was like, you should take time to be patient with people and get to know them and try to understand why they are the way they are, instead of uh, being the opposite, impatient, and just writing them off as, oh, they're a spoiled kid, oh, they're an old curmudgeon who just doesn't understand our generation. And it kind of, to me, it's opposite of old dads, where it's like two generations kind of understanding each other in a really interesting way. Anyway, so yeah, so I think that the overall plot I thought was really good. I love the friendship that gets connected between the two characters, and it has some. And the ending was somewhat surprising. It's not the best ending. I've heard some people say it wasn't the best ending. I kind of agree. I wish it ended a little differently. It could have been even higher on my list, but still, I like some of the stuff that happened there, and the respect that happens between the two characters. You really see it at the end, when they try to help each other out. When before they would throw each other on the bus, but at the end they're actually trying to help each other out, and I kind of like that. I guess I like the idea of helping people and being good to people and all that stuff. So at the end, it made me feel good. So yeah, Holdovers, number 9 on my list. I think I very recommend this one if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of romantic movies. Me either. I'm not a big romantic guy, but if it's done well, I like it. I know it's a while away, but you're playing it live with the Oscars. I don't know if anyone could set up, but it'd be cool doing live hangout, watching the Oscars, giving thoughts on winners. Yeah, I thought about it because I don't want to brag, but I'm pretty knowledgeable about the Oscars, Oscar history, past winners. Uh, Oscars has always been a big obsession of mine. I cover the Oscars a lot on my channel. So that would be fun to do a live reaction to the Oscars. Depends if I'm not working or not. If I'm working, then if I'm working that night, I'll have to see. I have to try not to work that night. That's my goal, is try not to work on Oscar night, and try to do a live reaction. Maybe that would be fun. If people would like me to do it, I would definitely love to do it. Um, Again, it'd be hard to do, to be honest. I don't know if I can do it or not, but uh, we'll see. Because I'd have to do it. Yeah, I don't know. That would be fun though, and other people are doing it. And like last year, Elliot did it, and I had a lot of fun watching Elliot do it. Last year, Elliot and Josh did it. There's a channel I really like called Nerdy Film Girl, and this girl named Tracy. She covers a lot of Oscar stuff, and she's going to do a live stream. So I don't know if I want to do a live stream, and then I won't be able to watch hers. So it's like other people will be doing it that I'd like to watch. But again, I think, yeah, I mean, it might be good, like I said, because I'm pretty knowledgeable about the Oscar. That's like one of the big things. I know a lot about the Oscars and have a lot of opinions about them. So I could probably do a pretty good one if I did it, but we'll see. I don't know, I'll think about it. All right. Number 8 on my list is my one of my favorite action movies of the year, and one of my favorite franchises, and another solid movie in the franchise, and that is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Um, Big fan of Mission Impossible. I have 3 through 6, I believe, on Blu-ray at the moment. I'm not as big fan of 1 and 2. That's why I don't got them on Blu-ray. But I really like 3 through 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the last 4 have been really good, I think. And they're, I would say right now, it's one of my favorite action franchises. I think it's even better than James Bond now. And I like James Bond. I'm a big James Bond fan, but Mission Impossible is just really hitting all cylinders at the moment. And this was one of the most anticipated movies of the year. I was really looking forward to this one, and for the most part, it didn't disappoint. It was still a very solid entry to the franchise. I had some problems with the movie. The overall villain being like an AI, I don't know. I feel like that's been done to death. Supercomputers like the villain. You have to stop, and even the Gabriel, like the guy, I didn't quite understand why he was helping the AI villain or whatever. I didn't quite understand all of that, but he was a decent villain overall. But some of that, I don't know. I just didn't care for the whole plot line necessarily. A certain character gets killed that I didn't really like. I don't know. I wasn't really into that. Um, the ending on the train, like the last train sequence was cool, but the idea that he was able to fly in and hit and crash into the train at the right time to stop this girl from getting killed just was a little too coincidental. Like there's a couple things like that. There's like a scene where he's like in a car and the train's about to hit it, and we don't see how he gets out of the car, but in the next scene he has like a steering wheel like handcuffed to him. So like, oh, somehow he took the steering wheel off, I guess, and got out of the car. But we don't see it happen. We just see, oh, he got out. And so you have to make assumptions. Like to me, I didn't like some of that stuff. I wish they would show us how he got out of situations instead of just we have to assume how he got out of. That makes sense. But overall, there's some really good action sequences here. I really like Tom Cruise. He's really, really good in this type of movie. Um, I think the chase scene where him and the girl have to be in this little car and they're being chased by all these other people. Like, and again, I don't understand who some of these people are. There's like some detectives or something that are going after them. And then there's the police, and then there's this other girl who works for the bad guy. And so there's this really great, I think they're in Italy, if I remember. I think they're in like Rome or something. And so there's a really good chase scene. It was really good, probably the funnest scene in the movie. But the airport scene at the beginning I thought was really well done. I actually quite enjoyed that. And then the ending train scene, I think there's some good stuff there. So again, the whole movie is about great action set pieces, and I think they did a good job with there. I wasn't crazy about the plot necessarily, but I think overall it was a fun movie. And like I said, I'm a big fan of this series, so I'm always going to probably enjoy these type of movies if they do a decent enough job. I do think this series should probably end with the next one, I guess, part 2. And again, the hard part about this one is it's the part 1, so you don't feel like you get a full movie out of it. So I'm curious to see how they end it. They might make this movie better if they make a really good second part as well. But Tom Cruise is in his 60s. I don't know how much longer he can do these stunts, but we'll see. Still doing it in his early 60s. But yeah, Mission Impossible. No surprise there. Number 8 on my list. All right, number 7 on my list. Another movie that kind of surprised me. One of my favorite animated movies of the year. Again, I talked about bad animation. This is good animation. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants of Mayhem, which I know Mike. He said his favorite animated movie of the year. I think he probably has it. I wouldn't be surprised if he had it in top 10. I know he was a big. He really liked the movie, a big component of this movie. I did not think I was going to like this movie, even though I am a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I got the first 2 movies on Blu-ray in the 90s, the 90s live action. I didn't like the Michael Bay ones as much. I didn't like the CGI turtles as much. This is a animated film, though, worked very well. And I was obsessed with the cartoon as a kid, of course. I watched the heck out of the cartoon. My favorite cartoon series probably as a kid. And I had action figures. I had like, the backpack with, I dressed up as Michelangelo for Halloween, all that stuff. Anyway, so I like this animation style. I think it kind of reminds me of the Spider-Verse movies and stuff like that. It's kind of a different animation style, but I think really works, and they do a good job. And again, I didn't like the trailer. I didn't think the jokes worked, but then I watched the movie. I thought it was funny. I thought the jokes really worked. There's some really fun scenes in there. I thought the voice work was really actually quite good overall. One of the things I didn't think I was gonna like was April, because they made April this. They made her a high school student instead of usually she's an adult, but they also made her black and overweight, and it was just a weird. It was totally different than April's ever been portrayed. So they did a totally different take on April. I would say this is a totally different take on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but yet keeps some of the spirit still there. I think that works. But I was really like, at first I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like this movie because I don't like they race swapped April, and they made her overweight, which was weird, instead of this good looking white girl. And it's like I don't get what they're going at with this idea. But then watching the movie, the character worked. I guess it's a different take on the character, but overall, I thought she worked well with the turtles. Like she's like this high schooler who's trying to become a reporter, and so she becomes friends with the turtles, and then she wants to kind of use them taking over the bad guys as kind of a breakout for her as a reporter, as a high school reporter. So, and she does become very good friends, and they work together very well, I think, as characters. So yeah, so overall, I was like, okay, I was wrong. I like this April character. I think she works well here. Anyways, but yeah, it's again the villain was kind of weird, I think, and there's some really weird moments in the movie that I wasn't totally on board with, but the overall story I thought was really good. Actually, I love the whole idea that the turtles want to be accepted by society. This idea that they're afraid they can't show themselves because they're afraid that they're going to be ostracized, they're going to be attacked, they're going to be all this bad stuff's going to happen to them. And so, but yeah, at the same time, they love human culture. They go watch movies. They go, they love pop culture. And that's the fun part of it, is that they're teenagers. So of course, as a teenager, you love pop culture stuff, and so they're like really into the current pop culture, and they really want to kind of they want to fit in with the humans. And I thought that was such a good idea story wise, that I kind of really got on board with. Like I really felt for the turtles during the movie. Like, man, I really want them to fit in with humans, and will they or won't they, kind of. And the idea that they think, well, if we take out these villains, then the humans will love us because we're heroes. They might love us because if we're heroic. Anyway, so I kind of love that whole idea, and the story arc with the characters, story arc with the whole story. How, I guess, spoilers, they do get accepted by the humans at the end, and I really like that because that doesn't really happen, I think, in other movies. But I thought that was a very strong story point that I thought had a really good arc to it at the end, where it's like, oh man, I feel good that they got kind of accepted at the end. I really wanted to. So I liked all that. I thought the action was done very well, and I love the characters. I just love the turtles. They're fun characters because they're teenagers, so they're immature, but yet in a very fun way, I think. And they're all about having fun. They don't get too serious, They don't get too, all that kind of stuff. I like. So to me, it was like a really fun movie. Animation was good, action was good, great story arc, and it made me laugh. So yeah, I have it here at number 7 on my list. If you can make me laugh, you can, have a good pace to your story, I'm going to like your story. I'm going to like your movie. So that's how this got in there at number 7. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants of Mayhem. If you think you're not going to like it, give it a chance. You might like it like me. Number 6 on my list is a movie nobody's talking about. It came out really early in the year, and I even was like, this story, I don't know if it seemed like it's been done before. It seemed like a knockoff story. So I don't know, I wasn't totally on board with it. And then I checked it out, and I really liked this movie. And it's called 65, which stands for 65 billion years ago, whatever. And it stars Adam Driver as this kind of he's from the future. He gets into, I forget exactly, he's on a mission. He's like a military guy, I think, and he's all like on some kind of mission. And he lands on this planet, but he finds out that he's actually 65 million years ago. I guess 65 million, yeah, where dinosaurs are around. Anyway, so it turns out that the ship went back in time to 65 million years ago. And everybody's like pretty much dead except for him and this little girl that can't talk or speaks a different language, I think. So he can't communicate with her, but he's trying to protect her anyways. And so it's a very simple story, but I think done very, very well. And it's just that he crashes lands on this, I say planet, crash lands on Earth from in the past when dinosaurs are, there's no humans, there's just dinosaurs. And so it's kind of got this Jurassic Park feel to it. And whole idea is that the ship kind of split up, and the other half of the ship is like, a ways away that they need to travel to, because it has like it's able, he can able to fly that part or something like that, and go back into the future, I guess. And so he needs to get him and the girl to this part. And of course, there's dinosaurs trying to eat him in between. So I don't know. Overall, I like that whole premise. I love the idea. But this one, he's futuristic, so he has like a futuristic gun, so he can shoot the dinosaurs, and he also can use some of this technology to figure out where how to get to the ship, and he uses technology to his advantage to not get killed by dinosaurs. So I love it as a thriller. I think it was very thrilling. I love the chase scenes with the dinosaurs. I thought Adam Driver did a really good job. Like I really like Adam Driver. I think he's one of my favorite actors today. Almost every movie I see him in, I think he does a good performance, and I think he's very underrated. This movie and his performance, I think, was really good here. And I was really on board the whole movie. I was never bored. I thought it was paced very well. I thought I loved the whole, dinosaurs being chasing him. One of my favorite scenes is there's like a T-Rex dinosaur, of course. There's a couple, but I think there's one that chases him, and he goes into this cave, and there's like a waterfall, and he's inside this cave with the girl, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And it's dark outside, and it's lightning, and there's a scene where lightning hits, and it, of course, lights up the scene, and you see the outline of the T-Rex right outside the waterfall. And I thought that was such a great shot. One of my favorite shots of the whole year, because you're like, oh my God, there's a T-Rex. You can see the outline, right? It's going to attack them, So I thought that was done so well. And even that scene was kind of scary. They had to go through this dark cave, and you don't know if there's dinosaurs in there. And then he's got to figure out, how do I get out of this cave? Because I can't go back this way because the T-Rex is there, and all that. Anyway, so I thought it was actually done very well as a kind of action thriller movie, I guess. And I think the last scene was done so well, where he's got to try to get in the ship, and two T-Rexes are attacking. He's got to distract them and somehow get the ship going. And he's also on a time limit because there's an asteroid coming towards Earth, and I guess this is the asteroid that kills all the dinosaurs. So he's got a very limited time to try to get into the ship and leave before the asteroid hits. So I love that whole idea. It's like you're running out of time, and it seems like everything's against him, and he's got to figure out how to get out of the situation. So yeah, as a thriller, I thought done very well. Really liked it. Very underrated movie. And so number 6 is 65 for me. Number 5 is maybe the most underrated movie of the year. It's a movie that I've seen many people really hate this movie. A lot of people are going to put this as a top 10 worst movie of the year. And I have it here at number 5. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. And it was a movie called Ghosted. Ghosted, which was a Apple TV movie that came out earlier this year. And I didn't have much expectations for it. It has, what's his name? Captain America himself is in it. I think Anna de Armas is the female. The two main characters, Anna de Armas and Evan. Is it Evan? The Captain America actor. I'm forgetting on top of my mind. It's them two, and it's this movie where it starts off as like this romantic comedy, and then he finds out that she's actually like a CIA agent who's trying to save the world or something like that, and he gets caught up because he's with her. The bad guys are after him too, so now she has to protect him, and so he's like like totally shocked. Of course, he had no idea that she was like this super CIA agent, and so then now it's like he was in love with her, but now he's not, because now all these people are trying to kill her, and in fact she's not very nice to him, but she's trying to protect them. And then he has to. Then it kind of comes out that like, okay, he's gonna have to pretend to be part of it because the bad guys are trying to kill him anyways. So he can't pretend like he doesn't know anything. So now he's got to try to be part of the mission. Anyways, that's kind of the basis of it. The whole it's called Ghosted because he has a one night stand with her, but then she disappears, and he tries to call her, but she never answers. So that's the whole idea, is that she ghosted him. Anyways, and so I really like this movie. People, I don't know, people do not like this movie. Elliot really did not like this movie. I think he probably has it in his top 10 worst. Jamie, I think, really did not like this movie. If I remember right, I can't remember. I think Jackson maybe didn't like this movie. I'm sure Jackson hated this movie. It's not his kind of movie, but it's my Pinocchio this year. It's the movie that I like that nobody else seems to like. I think Adam from What the Gym liked it, so I know I got him on board. But for the most part, most people are going to be like, "Oh, this movie is just I don't know." People, I don't even know why people didn't like this. I thought it was such a fun movie. It's an action comedy. I love action comedy, so it's kind of my type of movie, I guess I would say. And I thought, yeah, I thought the chemistry. Everybody says the same thing. In fact, I watched somebody not too long ago do a top 10 worst list, and this was in their top 10 worst, and I knew it was going to be. I was like, this is one of those movies that I love and everybody hates, and everybody said the same thing, that Anna de Armas and Chris Evans. That's right, yeah, Chris Evans, right? They have no chemistry. I don't know. I watched the movie and I thought they had great chemistry. So it's like one of those things where I totally disagree with people. I don't get why they. I don't understand why people say that. I thought they were great together. I thought they were fun. There's a lot of fun dialogue because they're like a lot of movie. They're kind of not getting along because of what happens, and so there's a lot of bickering. I thought the bickering was really fun. Uh, of course they get together at the end. That's kind of part of movie 101. Your two main actors are gonna get together because they're good looking and all that. But yeah, but still, I thought the relationship worked really well. So yeah, to me, it was a funny movie. It was fun, and I thought the action scenes were really good. I was totally on board with all the action that was going on. One action sequence I thought was really good. I think a lot of people thought the action sequences were maybe. I think some people think that maybe it was the special effects weren't good, but I thought they were good. It's just I don't know. I guess like it's like I saw a different movie or something. I was totally on board with all the action stuff, and I think a lot of people didn't care for the action maybe, but I was like, I thought it was great. There's this whole bus scene where they're on like this bus, and they're on like this one lane road, like in the mountains or something like that, where like if you go off the right, then you're gonna go down the mountain, so you don't really have a lot of room. Maybe it's a two-way road, but there's like not a lot of room. You're gonna fall down this mountain, and she has to do this move where she gets where the bus like does a U-turn somehow and somehow turns, and I thought it was incredible. Like I thought, wow, that was such a cool scene. The way they did it, I thought it was one of the best action scenes I've seen all year and maybe ever. And so it's one of those things where I was like, wow, this action is so good. I'm having so much fun with these characters. There's this one really fun scene where there's like 3 or 4 funny cameos right in a row, and they're all cameos from like Marvel movies, actors from Marvel movies that show up for like 10 seconds and they get killed, I guess, and that's spoiling it. But there's these 4 actors that come right in a row, and one guy comes in, and you're like, oh, wow, he's in this movie. And then he gets killed, and you're like, oh, okay, he's not. And then right after that, another actor, the actor who killed him, is another actor that has a cameo. And you're like, oh, wow, that actor's in here. And then he gets killed. So it's like, oh, these are just funny cameos. And I like that. I guess I love the fun cameos. Some people might be like, oh, those were stupid. But I was like, I had so much fun with this movie. So fun with the cameos. I've heard some people, hey, he's called his code name is Taxman. And throughout the movie, they keep calling him Taxman. And I heard some people complain. And then they play the song Taxman, which is a Beatles song, which I love. I think it's a great song, Taxman. So I had no problem because when they played Taxman, I was like, oh, I love this song. But I've heard some people complain about that. So I don't get the complaints. Disagree me if you will. I really like Ghosted. Number 5 on the list. All right, we got 4 more movies to talk about. Number 4 is another surprise movie. I was not expecting to like this movie as much as I did. It's another some of these movies are just really fun. I like a really fun movie, and so that's why some of these get up so high on my list. And this is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves. Another movie. No, I saw this, yeah, at home, and I don't know. I didn't. The trailer didn't look particularly great. It looked kind of goofy. Chris Pine, I like Chris Pine, but I don't know. Uh, Obviously, it's like action. It's a fantasy, but I don't know why. For some reason, in my mind, I thought, it doesn't look like a movie that's going to work. I was totally wrong. I thought this movie was great. Again, it has that fantasy element, which I like fantasy, And so it did have a fun fantasy element to it. And the cast of characters that got together had different, there's a guy who's like a magician. The girl's like a tough girl. There's a girl who can change, the change shift, what do you call it? A shifter, shapeshifter. Yeah. There's a shapeshifter in there. And Chris, I guess, Chris Pine, another Chris, he's more of a thief, I guess, of the movie. Anyways, but yeah, so I like the cast of characters and how they have this mission to steal something, and then something goes wrong, and then they have to figure out how to correct everything. And uh, it was a really fun movie. I think the action scenes were done very well, and it made me laugh. Like I think that's the main thing is I laughed throughout the whole movie. I thought they had some really fun gags throughout. Uh, my favorite gag was they had to get information from these guys that are dead. So they had to dig them up out of the grave, and they all died in a battle, and so they had this magic spell that can bring them to life, and only they have to ask them 3 questions, and after they ask them 3 questions, then they go back to being dead. And that's the whole thing. And so they bring this guy back to life, and then he asks him about the battle because they're trying to find this item, I think, and from what I remember. And so they ask him like these questions, and there's some good comedy bits there where they accidentally ask 3 questions without actually asking the question they wanted. So they messed up. And so then he dies, and like, oh, now we got to dig up another guy and ask him. So they dig up another guy and ask him the questions. And then he says, oh, you have to ask this other guy. So then they have to dig up this guy. And so it is such a funny sequence. I thought so cleverly done, like I've never seen before in a movie. In fact, I'm kind of spoiling it, unfortunately, if you haven't seen it. But I think the last guy, they ask him 2 questions, and then he gives them the information they need. And so then they leave, and then he's still a skeleton. He's still alive. And he's like, someone asked me a 3rd question so I can go back to being dead. And so it's funny gags like that throughout. Uh, it's not much more to say than that, except that I thought it was a really funny movie. And I even thought the ending, there's a good action sequence at the end. And there's actually a little dramatic, emotional scene at the end, too, that I thought was done very well. Uh, and Hugh Grant's kind of a villain in the movie, and he gets his comeuppance as well. But yeah, I thought it was just a really, really fun movie and really enjoyable. Love the fantasy elements, action, comedy, all done very well. So yeah, definitely recommend Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves. If you thought this wasn't for you, give it a chance. All right, now my top 3 favorite movies of the year. Number 3 is another movie that's more, I liked it for personal reasons maybe. And I understand someone saw this movie and was like, it was one well made maybe, but I had to put it up there because it was one of the more emotional movies for me, and that is called Jesus Revolution. And of course, it's done by I think Angel Studios maybe or something. It's a Christian movie, I have to admit. And so if you're not a Christian, you might be like, this movie isn't for me. I mean, take that as you will. I'm a Christian, so it definitely spoke to me. So that's why I had to put her at number 3. Like I said, I got a lot of emotional output out of it. Also, I thought it was an interesting story. It's based off a true story that I knew nothing about. Um, I'm trying to think. It's in the 60s. I think it takes place in the late 60s in California, and it's about kind of this hippie Christian movement that happened at the time, which I didn't know anything about. But it's about a true story about this. There are 3 different characters really that are the main characters, but there's a pastor that's played by Kelsey Grammer, who I thought was really good in the movie. Actually, Kelsey Grammer, he plays this pastor like of this very conservative church, but it's a very small church. It's not growing very well. And then there's this hippie movement that happens, and there's this guy. Uh, I'm forgetting names. I should have written down names, but Lonnie. His name is Lonnie, and he's a Christian. He kind of converts to Christianity, and he kind of converts other hippies. And so they go into this church, and he kind of, it's about this, very conservative people in the church are like, oh, we don't want these hippies here. They're weird. They have long hair. They wear sandals, or they go barefoot, and they wear weird clothing, and there's all ideas like, oh, we don't want them in our church. But then the main pastor's like, yeah, but we shouldn't, you shouldn't, if they're Christians, you shouldn't, you need to accept them kind of idea, and we should help people, not, turn people away, as a Christian. So I like that whole idea of like, accepting, should we accept these hippies, even though they're different, or should we look at people differently because they dress differently, but yet they still need Jesus like anybody else. So I like the whole idea. It's like, yeah, we need to accept people, even if they're different than us. So I like the whole idea behind that. And so this Lonnie guy, he's very charismatic, even though he's not a preacher necessarily, he's starting to like preach sermons and he's reaching people that weren't reached before. So he's reaching a different community and bringing people to the church, what I think is great. And then you have this third character who's interesting because he's in real life he becomes a major pastor. He pastors to this day. He's pastoring a mega church in California, and so he's this big mega church pastor. But in the movie, kind of about his life a little bit, is he kind of gets into the hippie movement and is not a Christian. And part of the hippie movement is doing drugs. They're doing drugs and all this. And he kind of has this girlfriend he meets through the hippie movement, but then they go away from the drugs because they see someone like die of drug overdose, and so they kind of realize that they need to get away from that life. And so then they kind of hear about this church and the hippie kind of Christian movement, and they kind of get involved in the church. And one of the scenes I love that really makes me emotional actually is that they did this in real life. I guess they baptize people in the ocean because they're in California, they're on the coast there, and so they're able to. This cool scene where there's like these cliffs and they're like in the ocean, and there's this line of people ready to get baptized, and so there's this huge like revival movement there where they baptized a lot of people, which was kind of cool. And I think, yeah, and so there's a great scene where he goes and gets baptized by Lonnie Frisbee. Lonnie Frisbee, his name is. And so he gets baptized, and I just love that moment where he kind of accepts Jesus as the Savior. And I think he does a really good job with the gospel message. I think sometimes in the Christian movies, they kind of go away from the gospel message because gospel message can be controversial. You have to be saved to go to heaven. You have to believe in Jesus Christ, your Savior. Some people don't like to hear that, but I don't think they shy away from that in this movie, and I like that he does say something of the gospel message. I think in a right way that I go, if someone watched this, they would get the gospel, which is great because obviously as a Christian, I'd love for everybody to believe in Jesus and be saved and go to heaven. That'd be wonderful to me. So I love the whole outreach of the movie, and it was very educational. I thought I learned a lot about a moment in time that I didn't know about. So again, I think I can understand some of the writing isn't great. I think the romance story between the two characters is not done very well, and there's some scenes that I think that could have been done better. And it's not the best performance of the movie, but I thought the guy, I forget his name, Romy. I think his name is Romy. He plays Lonnie Frisbee. I thought he did a great job as the character. He also plays Jesus in the Chosen TV show. So I've seen him many times in the Chosen show, and he's great as Jesus there. And I thought he did a good job here as Lonnie Frisbee. I thought Kelsey Grammer did a good job. So the performances, some of those main performances, I thought were done very well. Again, yeah, I wish the screenwriting was a little bit better. I will agree, but still, it's number 3 on my list just because I did get emotional at some of those scenes where people believe in Jesus. That always gets me emotional because that's an emotional moment in your life when you accept Jesus as your Savior. And it's always happy to hear someone accept Jesus because you're like, all right, good, they're going to heaven. I love to see people go to heaven. That kind of stuff. But yeah, so hey, Lewis, nice to see you. Thanks for viewing. Anyway, so I recommend to anybody, I guess especially if you're a Christian, I think you would like the movie. If you're not a Christian, I mean, I would still give it a chance. I would love for anybody to see this movie. I know Mike said he would be willing to see the movie, so I thought it was really well done. Anyways, overall, the story, all that stuff, and yeah. So I on emotional part of me, I really like this movie, and so that's why it's number 3 on my list. Jesus Revolution. All right, get into my top 2 favorite movies. It's funny. My number 2 was my number 1 for a long time. And then when I saw the number 1 movie, it kind of got in there. And it's similar to last year. I have to pick between the movie that was the most entertaining movie of the year and the movie that was the most emotional movie of the year. And so it's like, where do you go with? Do you go with the movie that was the funnest movie of the year and entertained you most? Or go with the movie that made you cry and made you feel a lot of emotions? And last year I had number two. I put what's it called? I had the movie actually on Steelbook. Um, Bullet Train, I think it was called. Bullet Train, I had number two last year on my list because it was the funnest movie of the year, most entertaining movie I saw. Number one last year, I actually put Emancipation, which I don't think anybody saw. It was an Apple Plus movie with Will Smith playing a runaway slave, and it's called Emancipation. And it was a very emotional movie, and I put that number one because I do when a movie hits me, when I cry. If a movie hits me emotionally and I cry, to me it's a great movie because you did what you wanted to do. You made me feel those emotions, which is really good if you can do that as a movie. This year, similar. Number two is my most entertaining movie of the year. My number one is the movie I cried the most at. So similar to this year. So number two is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which to me was the best animated movie, of course. And number two on my list, it was a really fun movie. I love the animation style. I thought Into the Spider-Verse was decent. I wasn't in love with that movie. I thought the movie was better than the first one, but yet it made me like the first one even better because the continuing story I thought was so good. Again, the animation was great. Love the characters. The action scenes are so good. There's a scene early on where Spider Gwen has to fight a vulture character from the Renaissance era, and so the animation is different for the vulture than it is for Gwen. So it's these two contrasting animation styles, and they have this action scene, and it was done so good. I was like, wow, this was a great action scene, and I love how they did it in the animation styles. And of course, one of the fun parts of these movies is they do different animation styles within the movie. Different characters come from different universes, and the different multiverses have different animation styles. I thought that was a cool idea. So you kind of got the idea, oh, this person's from a different universe because their animation style is different. So I thought that was really cool. I thought it was very funny. Like I laughed throughout this whole movie. I love the Spot. Jason Schwartzman plays the Spot, who's kind of the main villain in the movie. And at first he's just kind of a funny character, and then later on becomes a very powerful villain. I thought that was kind of interesting, but his stuff is so good. I love he's trying to steal an ATM at the beginning, and the store owner, of course, is like, hey, stop, don't do that. And he's like, and he says something like, sir, this is my first robbery. Please don't make this difficult for me. And I thought that was such a funny line. He's like, hey, I'm new at this. Don't stop giving me trouble. And it's like, well, of course he's going to give me trouble. You're trying to steal something. There's a lot of stuff, and a lot of dialogue between those two are really funny. The action scene is really good between Spider-Man and Spot because Spot can make these portals where you can go through them. So it's very clever the way they did that stuff. So that's all done very well. And then the story was really good. I love how stuff that happens in the first movie had implications to this movie. Like, because he did stuff in the first movie, you go, oh, that had an effect on the future. And now he has to deal with the consequences. It basically had consequences. So the consequences from the first movie affect the second movie. And I thought that was so well done. And I love the character and how that, how he has to overcome these new consequences. And it's not over. There's going to be a third movie, of course, coming out. So I'm excited to see the third movie because I thought this was done so well. And of course, we have this scene where he goes and there's all these Spider-Mans from these different multiverses. Incredible. Like there's hundreds of different styles of Spider-Mans that all are in this scene together. I thought that was really cool. And there's a lot of fun stuff there, of course, with the different Spider-Man designs and all that. I really like. A lot of people like Spider-Punk. He was okay. I really like the Spider-Man from India. I thought that was actually one of my favorite scenes is when he's in this multiverse. They're in India, and the Spider-Man is from India, and they have to have this little action scene in India. And I thought he was a fun character, and actually one of my favorite new characters, to be honest. I really like that character. He has a mask, but yet he lets his hair go because he has like nice hair, so he's always wants to compliment his hair. And I love that he's like in India. I love the style of the movie where it's like they introduce a character and then they do let me talk about myself, and then they showcase like what their life is like anyways, and then it's almost like they pause the movie to go, here's the backstory of this character, and then they go through a little bit of backstory, and then they go, okay, let's resume the movie. I love that. I thought that was a great storytelling idea. But the guy from India, I just loved because he's like, all right, let me tell you about my life. And he's like, in India, there's traffic, and then there's traffic. And he keeps talking about how much traffic there is in India. There's some fun sequences there. Anyways, just to say, overall, this movie was so fun. I was so entertained. I had such a great time with it. It made me laugh. Action scenes were so well done, and it was really good storytelling. I mean, it's just hit on all factors that you want in a movie. And so that's why I got Spider-Man Across the Universe #2 on my list, which I've seen. It's on about everybody's top 10 list for good reason. If you haven't seen it, you have to see Spider-Man. The two Spider-Man movies, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, some of the best animation you've seen. The first movie won the Oscar for Best Anime Movie. I think this will win an Oscar too. So it'll be interesting to see two movies, the sequel and the original, both win Oscars. I don't know. That didn't happen too often I can think of. Like Toy Story, I think Toy Story 3 and 4 won. So that happened in Toy Story, but you don't get sequels win that often. But so I think this definitely has a chance. I thought it was a great movie. The one I definitely want to get. All right, number one, favorite movie, the movie that made me cry the most, the movie I got so emotional during and was so satisfied at the end. I thought very well done. Somewhat underrated movie, though it did make actually, it was a low budget movie that actually did very well in the theaters, I think. And that is called Sound of Freedom, which is based off of a true story, based off of a real person who works for, I want to say, the FBI, and he deals with child sex trafficking, you know, rescuing kids that are, you know, kidnapped and stopping these, you know, sex trafficking rings, you know, that happen. So it's a very dark subject matter. I mean, the darkest subject matter you can ever imagine. You know, I hate kids getting hurt. That's the worst thing in the world. I think that's the most evil thing in this world. Anybody that hurts a kid, that's ultimate evil in the world. And I think that person is going to be punished very, very strongly by God at some point, whether it's an afterlife or this life. Bad things are going to happen to people that hurt kids, and I hate people that hurt kids. Anyway, so it was, like I said, very emotional just because it's a movie about trying to stop people who hurt kids, mainly people who kidnap kids and then put them in a sex trafficking where grown men have sex with these kids. It's again, it's the worst thing you can ever think of. And the fact that this movie, of course, doesn't show anything, but the idea that you just know this happens is disturbing beyond belief. You're just so disturbed by the subject matter and just the idea that, oh, this is scum of the earth, these guys that would do this to kids. Anyways, and so it makes you really like the main character because his whole thing is trying to rescue kids and stop these guys from murder, or these guys from sexually abusing kids, you know. Anyway, so and the movie kind of followed, like I said, true story of this real guy, played by Jim Caviezel. Jim Caviezel, best performance of his career. I love his performance, and I love Jim Caviezel. He's one of my favorite actors out there. I've always liked him since Frequency was one of my favorite movies back in the maybe late 90s, early 2000s. No, I think it came out maybe 2000. The Count of Monte Cristo, so good. Of course, he played Jesus in the Passion of the Christ, you know, which was a huge movie. He was in a TV show I really liked as well. I'm forgetting what it's called, but anything Jim Caviezel's in, I'm on board because he's such a good actor, so underrated. And this movie is funny. It's kind of somewhat controversial, I guess, in the sense that Jim Caviezel is more conservative, and I think the studio is more. I think it might have been Angel Studios that did it. So it's definitely a Christian conservative studio, I think, that did it. And Jim Caviezel is he's a Christian and conservative, and so he's somewhat blacklisted from Hollywood because Hollywood doesn't like conservative Christians. And so doing this movie, it felt, if I remember right, the studio tried to play this movie down, try to keep it out of theaters, try to keep it off streaming. So it was like a big fight to get this movie out. In fact, I think this movie was made some years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, and they've been fighting to get it into theaters, and they finally got it in, and it did really well when it got in theaters. Compared to how low budget it was, I think it did pretty well. So it's one of those things where it's a kind of, it makes you feel good that a movie that has these conservative ideals kind of, got out there and did well. And there's an audience for that. And yeah, this is the movie I was anticipating. I really wanted to see it, and I was so happy I finally got to see it. Like I said, I mean, the story of this guy trying to, he goes to like South America, I think, and tries to stop this sex trafficking ring. He's also trying to rescue this girl because he rescued the brother and he wants to rescue her sister. And so there's that emotional moment in it. And when they do rescue the children, I mean, I'm like I said, I cried my eyes out. I don't think you could watch this movie and not cry. I would challenge anybody to watch Sound of Freedom and not cry your eyes out. I mean, how can you not? There's a moment, I'm spoiling the movie maybe a little bit, but I just talk about how much I love this movie. A moment where he stops this sex trafficking and he organizes this whole sting operation, and they capture these terrible, horrible people in South America, and they rescue all these kids, and all the kids are laughing and playing and all that stuff, and he's watching them, and I'm gonna get emotional just talking about it. But the guy says, "Do you hear that? That's the sound of freedom." Because it's like, yeah, these kids are finally free. They've been kidnapped and horribly abused, and now they're fun. They're being kids. Kids should be kids. They should be out there playing and laughing and having fun. And the fact that these horrible people took their childhood away is so terrible. And so that's why it's called Sound of Freedom, because like hearing the kids being free from this horribleness, it's such a great sound. Hearing kids having fun and being kids. Yeah. Anyway, so I got very emotional watching this one, and I hate the fact that happens real life. It makes you go, you forget how evil the world is, and then you watch this movie and you go, oh man, the world is so evil. And as a Christian, I think we all need Jesus because the world is so evil, and it's because of sinful nature in the world. And I try to forget how evil the world is, and you watch this movie and you go, oh yeah, the world is evil, and there's so much evil people out there that need to be stopped. And I hate the fact that there's all this evilness happening, and wish it could be stopped. But it's nice that at least we get some people get saved and rescued, and this movie kind of about that, rescuing kids from this horribleness. And great scene. There's a good thrilling scene where he has to go into the jungles of these like guerrilla warfare fighters and try to save this one girl. I mean, it's all about saving this one girl at one point. And that's such a great thrilling scene of him rescuing her and trying to get away and all that. So yeah, as a thriller movie, really well done. The performances are really good. And again, it's a subject matter I guess you need to think about or know that this does happen in the world. You need to protect your kids and other kids because they're preyed upon, unfortunately, and you have to keep a notice of that we need more people like this main character to save kids from the evilness. Anyway, so all that was, yeah, like I said, very emotional movie. And at the end, I was just feeling all these emotions, but really good emotions in a good way. Feeling very happy that these kids were saved in the movie, representing real kids, and I'd love to see kids get saved in real life as well. See, Ryan, I remember hearing the buzz around Sound of Freedom. I want to watch it, but no, it would be pretty. Yes, it's a hard movie to watch, but I recommend it because, again, it makes you feel good that there's good people out there that are doing good things, and you like the fact that there's somebody like this out there helping save kids, And I guess that's why I like it so much, is I feel so strongly about the subject matter of saving kids from all this sex trafficking and all that, and really want to support any of that. And this is a good movie to watch, support, the people that made it, that are trying to do good things in the world. Unlike most Hollywood movies, it's like there's really about doing good in the world anyway. So yeah, Sound of Freedom, my number one spot. Yeah. What can I say? Just emotional roller coaster movie that I recommend to anybody to watch, even though it's a hard movie to watch. And I probably wouldn't watch it again just because it's hard to get through those emotions again. But yeah, it's a good first time watch anyways. And that's why it's number one on my top 10 list. So that's my top 10 and my top one list. I got over 3 hours. Wow, long stream, but I was happy for anybody watching this. Thank you a lot to you guys and girls, to Mike and Sin and Ryan and Lewis and AJ. I don't know if I missed anybody, but thank you for commenting, and thank you to anybody watching this stream. I really appreciate you being hopefully nice to me and my opinions and not hit me too hard for some of them. But I hope you enjoy this. And again, just want to wish you all a good holiday season up to the New Year's and a good New Year's. And take care.